Hi, this is Roger Moore, and you're listening to James Bond Radio.
Hello, and welcome to episode 130 of James Bond Radio, where today we'll be talking about part one of the Stunts of James Bond. With me, as always, is my Balinese buddy, the amazing Mr. Tom Sears. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing very well, man. How are you doing? Happy New Year. How you doing? How you feeling? Are you feeling strong and fresh for 2018 is what I'm trying to say.
I tell you what, I've got a really, really good feeling that 2018 is going to be a belter of a year for so many reasons, but I think it's going to be a brilliant year for Bond. I know we haven't got one coming out in 2018, but I'm really excited to get the ball rolling with Bond 25 and all that, and it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Well,
man.
You know what, Chris? Bond 25 comes out next year.
I know, we can say that now. How cool is that?
Yeah.
Bond 25 comes out next year.
Absolutely.
It's still freaking ages away, but at least we can kind of say it. I mean, that sounds good.
Absolutely. Well, I'm starting the year off with a little bit of a cold, but I'm not letting it beat me, Chris. What I'm doing is I've got some of this, right, which is an ancient Indonesian health tonic called jamu, which has all sorts of shit in there: turmeric, ginger, black pepper, lemon, honey, and water. And it's supposed to zap you. And I had a whole bottle of it yesterday, and I'm already feeling a bit brighter. So I'm getting another one in me today, and I think I'm on the mend.
So just to double check, do you have a stake in the company if you make commission on any?
There are other brands of jamu available, but you can get the JBR brand just by going to jamesbondradio.com. Yeah, absolutely. But so what are we talking about today, man?
Yes, so this is interesting. Now, the Stunts of Bond, we're planning to do quite a few episodes on this, but rather than, sort of previous things that we've looked at, we've kind of done them back to back and stuff. We've had part one, part two. This one, I think we're going to space them out. But the first one today is a couple of interviews we've got from the stunt world. Now, these guys, one will be very familiar to a lot of the listeners, one probably not familiar at all, but both really, really cool interviews. I really think the listeners are going to love it.
You know what, man? You could almost do, I think the stunts is almost something that could do with its own podcast, couldn't it? It's the same as like the music, the films, the books. You could do a dedicated full-time podcast on just those things. That's part of the wonderful thing of Bond, isn't it? Is that there's so many facets to it to explore and get stuck into. And I'm actually surprised it's taken us this long to actually start exploring the stunts, isn't it? I feel like we would have gone there before.
Yeah, I think when we sort of listed out all the different things we could look at, it definitely came up because obviously I'm a huge fan of that sort of side of things, and it's just that it hasn't, it's taken us a little while to come around to it. But that doesn't make it any less, good for looking into, which is really cool. So should we start with a bit of news then?
Come on, then.
Bond 25 news. Okay, so we heard last time Barbara saying, right, at the start of the new year, we're going to have a big announcement, whether it's a director, whatever it might be. And we haven't heard anything yet. Now, obviously, this has been recorded before today. So if something happens in the next few days, then obviously we look screwed. But so we haven't really heard anything as such. But I mean, I'm pretty much guaranteed that it's going to be either a distributor or the director confirmed. I don't know. What are your thoughts? What do you think?
I feel like other than Daniel coming back, which of course we've already had, I feel like the first port of call has to be the director, isn't it? That's got to, because everything flows from that point onward, doesn't it? Because essentially it's that person's vision is going to be the biggest kind of steering thing for the whole project. So I think, that's good use of language from me there. But I feel like that's got to be what comes next. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So
definitely.
So as we were saying, Bond 25's out next year. So, was it November 9th, wasn't it? Was the US release date that they mentioned last year. So it's probably going to be tail end of October for us in the UK, or the very beginning of November for us in the UK. So that's not that far away now, right? And I know it feels like it is, but when you think about how quickly 2017 went, and I can't quite believe we're in 2018, and in the blink of an eye, we're probably going to be in February. And then another blink of an eye will be in March and April, and it's just gonna keep coming. And as soon as, by the time we're in April, right, they're going to start shooting probably this December, Chris, right? They're going to be shooting by December, January next year at the very latest, but probably this December if we can follow, like what they did for Spectre. So by the time you hit April, we've got to have some juice out of this lemon, man. We have to have some juice, and I feel like it's coming soon. I feel like it is.
We're going to squeeze it, man. We're going to squeeze it and find out everything we can. But do you know what? I think if we can, I don't know if it's going to be possible at all, but I think we should try and go to a potential location that they're filming at, if we can find out. Because I know you had that little time in London for Skyfall. Yeah. I've never been on set while a Bond's been filming on location. I've been to locations literally just missing them by a few months or something. But I think if possible, even just to go somewhere where we could sort of view it from afar, but just see, oh, look, they're shooting something there. I think that should be a mission for us.
That should definitely be a mission. And I mean, so for me, when they were shooting Skyfall, I remember going up to London on that day, and they were shooting across along the bank. So it was basically the scene where Em and Tanner are in the car on the way back to MI6, just before MI6 blows up. So I remember walking across that bridge, and they were like dudes with the little microphones on and walkie-talkies and stuff. And they asked me to walk on a certain side of the street. And I remember there was a little street, like a sign in the middle of the street, like a no entry sign, and it said B23 Productions on it. And I remember giggling to myself like a small boy. And as I walked along, I could see set up in like there was some kind of old school building over there with a big garden, and all the crew and stuff was set up over there. And then, so I'm of course combing the area for Daniel, and then I see this like flatbed truck come past. Now, before even that happened, the cars that were driving along, all of a sudden, all of them in sequence just completely stopped, and then started backing up all in. It was quite creepy, like I'd fallen into the Matrix or something. And then they would come forward again, and then they would stop and back up. So by the time I'd kind of walked halfway across the thing, I see this flatbed truck in the middle with this massive light box on the front of it and cameras and all the rest of it. And it was the back of a car chopped off. And in the back of the car was obviously good old Judy and Bill Tanner doing that little scene. So yeah, man, that was a special moment, knowing that I was like, when they filmed that, I was right there. And I feel like, obviously, there were loads of people that went for Spectre, didn't they, when they were shooting the finale on the Thames, right by the Houses of Parliament. Loads of people went up for that and were watching from the Thames, which I feel like we should have done that, man. I feel like we missed a trick there. So it's possible, it's doable, especially if there are a lot of British locations, which they tend to be around London, don't they? So I feel like we can make that happen next time.
I think it's definitely, we definitely make it happen. The thing is, obviously, with Skyfall and Spectre, we had a lot of London locations. Now, if Mendes doesn't come back for the next one, and obviously we don't know, but it could be unlikely, then it might be the case that there's a lot fewer scenes in London or thereabouts. But either which way, we'll find out. We'll send a mole out into the location department and get as much info as we can, I think.
Maybe that'll be the next JBR meetup. If they're filming along the Thames or something, we can just line the banks of the Thames with JBR flags and just really please Barbara and Michael. That'll make them happy, I'm sure.
Oh. They'll love that, yeah, absolutely. So speaking of Barbara, actually, it was a little bit just before Christmas. She did a podcast interview, a really, really good one. I don't know if you've had a chance to listen to it yourself. It was for the Awards Chatter podcast, which came out on December the 23rd. Right. Did you manage to catch that at all?
I didn't. I caught the kind of highlights of what was said, but I didn't actually listen to it.
Yeah. Well, I had a listen. It was a long interview. A lot of it was about the film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool. Obviously, she was promoting that a bit. But as with any sort of interviewer, obviously, the guy was trying to get a few questions about Bond out. So there were a few things she mentioned, like nothing major, but I thought it's worth sort of highlighting a couple of things. So I'll just go through a lot of it.
Come on,
she had huge praise for Daniel pretty much throughout. She said he's brought a lot of humanity to the character, which is certainly needed in this day and age. We need heroes that are human. Daniel's done an incredible job making Bond relevant to today. I'm really, really pleased he's decided to come back for another one because my heart was breaking.
Ah, bless her little heart.
That's sweet, isn't it? In regards to all the previous Bond actors, she said, fortunately, we've stayed close, all of us, in terms of Eon and all the previous Bond actors, which is good. She said, don't become a film producer if you don't like problems. I love what I do. I love making movies. It's a gift. It's a privilege, and I don't take it for granted and never will. So that's pretty cool as well. So the guy said, okay, come on, Bond 25. Do we know a title or director yet? Barbara said, no, well, I don't. know if anyone else does, and she obviously says that jokingly. As she said, it's still to be determined. We're back to the drawing board again with Rob and Neil, our writers. They're busy working away, trying to come up with something fantastic. So obviously,
cool.
No kind of new news there. She said, now this is interesting. So we're very open to the future and is excited to be courted in regards to potential distributors. We'll hopefully be making that decision sometime early next year, i.e. early 2018. So that's got to happen soon, man. That's got to happen. The interviewer said, will we ever see a Bond crossover? A bit like, Batman versus Superman. And Barbara thankfully said, I think that's probably unlikely. Thank effing hell for that.
Yeah, I don't know what you'd cross over Bond with, though, either. It's
exactly.
Batman and Superman, they obviously exist within the same universe. But what would you cross over Bond with? I feel like...
Indiana Jones.
Yeah, maybe.
That would...
Yeah. No. I suppose you'd have to have Bond in the 30s, which, but hey-ho, whatever. But yeah, I don't know. Bond and Star Wars, maybe. Who knows? Well, we already had that, didn't we? Really, in a sort of sneaky way.
That's true. Yeah, both camps, really, in both franchises. And then finally, she said, the interviewer said, so after your and Michael's time as custodian of Bond is over, what would you like to see? Are there other members of the family who could keep it going?
Now, that's a good question.
Yes.
This interviewer obviously knows his Bond stuff. I like that question because that's the sort of question I'd want to ask if I ever got my hands on Barbara. Yeah. But you'd also be a little bit cautious about a question like that, wouldn't you? I'm glad he's come out with that. Yeah.
Definitely. Now, the answer, it's short, but it's very interesting. She said, it's a family business. I mean, it'd be nice to think the family will continue, but, again, Bond belongs to everybody, so we'll have to see. He'll survive whatever happens. Now, that... What are we thinking? What are we thinking to that? I mean, is Greg going to step up? It's either Greg's going to step up to the plate and take it forward, or it's going to be Disney. How much did you want Bond for? And it's going to be one of those two, basically, isn't it?
Well, the thing is, man, let's just dissect that again. It's a family business. Yeah. I mean, it would be nice to think that the family will continue, but again, Bond belongs to everybody, so we'll see. He'll survive whatever happens. So that tells me she's, I feel like if you'd asked Cubby that question, he'd have been like, no, I ain't selling it. Like, it's going to be in the Broccoli family forever. I feel like this tells us that she's open to different possibilities. You know what I mean? I feel like that those cards are on the table in some way, shape or form, I think.
Yeah, 100%. So again, I guess that relates a bit more to post Bond 25, which we'll obviously find out in the future. There was another sort of bit in. Oh, sorry. Go on.
I was going to say, when you think that with the Star Wars thing, with George selling the whole Star Wars franchise, Lucasfilm to Disney, they've already crossed the $4 billion price tag that they paid in box office receipts. So obviously that's not all profit. It's not like they've made that back. What I mean? I'm sure only a small amount of that is actually profit. But in terms of sales numbers, they've actually made that money back straight away within,
that's crazy, isn't it?
What is it, 3 movies now? So, all within a few short years of each other. So I feel like if you owned a behemoth like Bond, those numbers must be very intriguing to you. If somebody said to you, Chris, we want to buy JBR off you and Tom, right, we're going to give you £1 billion. What would you say?
I'd say I'd have to think about it. $1.5 billion?
Yeah, we'd have to bargain hard, Chris. We couldn't just take the first offer. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But do you know what I mean? I feel like something that's close to your heart like that, like Bond's been in her family ever since she was tiny or whatever, and it's like, damn, that must be a hard thing to let go of. But at the same time, with those big bucks like that being thrown around the place these days, I feel like that would be a hard thing to say no to.
It is, but then I don't think they need the money exactly. I think they're doing not bad.
Yeah, I guess so.
And when they bought out Lucasfilm wasn't just Lucas. Lucasfilm is a huge corporation. So it was to cover a fair few people. Obviously, the CEOs at the top got the money, and Eon have got obviously the Broccolis as the main, and obviously Michael G. Wilson as the main sort of lead, so to speak. But in terms of crew and stuff like that, that's all hired. So that's not part of Eon. Yeah. They're hired per film. So Eon Productions as itself is nothing like a Lucasfilm. So the amount of money they've got in terms of what they need. Obviously, they don't need more money unless they've got some other completely different projects they want to do. You know, save the world, ecology, or all that sort of stuff. Who knows? But so I don't know how much of a incentive. How much an incentive $1 billion would be? But I guess it does sound kind of interesting when you say it like that. But yeah. We'll have to wait and see.
Well, when we're billionaires, Chris, we'll know the answer to that. We'll just have to keep chipping away.
Well, this is it. This is it. So Denis Villeneuve, he's come out to say, I know we mentioned it previously, but he's had another interview. This one was with Screen Rant last week, and he's reiterated that his commitment to helming Dune will clash with the production of Bond 25, so he's definitely ruled himself out, although he did confirm he's had talks with Barbara, and he's definitely putting his hat into the ring for like a future Bond. So it's kind of what we knew, but obviously interesting all the same. So do you remember, I think we mentioned it previously, there's an exhibit sort of thing going in Solden in Austria where they shot a lot of Spectre called 007 Elements. Now it's kind of like a series of galleries aimed at displaying sort of different elements of a James Bond film. I don't know the full details, but I'm assuming you'll have stuff like locations, gadgets, whatever it might be, I'm not sure. So this has been headed by Neil Callow, and he's been an art director on quite a few of the recent Bonds. So obviously he knows his stuff, which is good.
Nice.
And they've actually released a teaser trailer. It's really short. It's only a few, 20, 30 seconds, something like that. But we'll stick the link on the Facebook page and perhaps stick it on this episode as well for the YouTubers to have a look at, which is good. But again, I mean, once that's set up, you'll have the 007 Walk of Fame, Peace Gloria, amazing. You'll have that sort of 007 Elements thing to visit in Austria. I mean, that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, and Bond in Motion as well in London. So there's all
Bond
sorts.
in Motion.
Yeah, we need more of that stuff, don't we?
I know. We were saying about all these conventions and events, and like we mentioned, there's a few out there, but there needs to be more, man. There needs to be more, definitely.
Absolutely, man. Our Bond theme park is just just a few years away, I reckon. I tell you what, though, if Disney did buy the Bond franchise, then that would be the gateway to that stuff, wouldn't it? Yeah. For sure.
Well, if they do, I think you and I should write a letter to CEO of Disney, Mr. Walt Jr. and say and show him our ideas for the JB theme park.
Damn right.
And hopefully,
I feel like they would get a similar response to your letter about Quantum of Solace.
I think so.
Cool stuff.
Pretty much. Yeah. So in other news then, Sir Roger Moore, the lovely and great late Sir Roger, he was named Peter's 2017 Person of the Year. So Peter, that stands for People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. Lovely. Obviously, Sir Roger, we knew about the whole thing with foie gras and all of that. Yeah, exactly. And on honouring Sir Roger with the award, the Peter founder, Ingrid Newkirk, told WENN, animals in dire need had a caring, charming friend in Sir Roger Moore. Peter is honoured to recognise this wonderful man for sticking his neck out for the vulnerable amongst us time and again. I mean... Isn't
that lovely? That's legend. So nice, yeah. Did you listen to that BBC thing that they played over Christmas period, the tribute to him on Radio 2?
So the one that was Nobody Does It Better, I've listened to half of it. I'm going to listen to the other half later on today or tomorrow, actually. And from what I've heard so far, it's brilliant. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Absolutely bloody lovely. Now, what do you reckon about all this 4K Bond business? Obviously, you can get Blu-rays and DVDs at the moment, but 4K resolution Bond films. Now, what's going on with this is you can get them already on iTunes, right? They cost $15 a piece. You can watch a bit of 4K Bond, but they're not releasing them for home consumption on disc yet. And I would imagine because people don't really have 4K. It's like loads of people have a Blu-ray player, for example, but nobody's got a 4K player as far as I'm aware these days. I don't
or 4K TV.
Yeah, I mean they might have the TV, but in terms of the actual sort of apparatus to play that disc, I don't know of anybody who's even mentioned any kind of special stuff that you need to play a 4K movie on disc. So I'm guessing that's why they've kind of like kept those back until that becomes a thing, and then it can be a massive monster re-release of Bond in 4K. But it's interesting that they have released them on iTunes. So what do you think about that?
Well, it's good and it's bad. It's good because obviously, everyone who's on iTunes, and I think there's free upgrades. So for people that have previously bought them on iTunes on HDR or whatever, might get upgrades. But this is only for North America, so it's definitely the US.
Okay.
I think probably Canada as well. But in the UK, the iTunes, we haven't got the bonds, or at least, as far as I'm aware, we definitely haven't got all of them. So we'll have to find out when the UK sort of release for that is. But I mean, the Blu-rays, luckily I've seen them recently now, and they do look stunning. If you've got a nice TV and the Blu-ray player, they look great. It'd be really intriguing to compare. Okay, so you've got a Blu-ray screen here, you've got a 4K screen here.
Yeah.
And play both just to see, because I mean, obviously you get to see so much with the Blu-ray. How much clearer can we make things, Tom?
Yeah.
And there's 8K around the corner as well.
Is there really?
There is 8K around the
Good
corner.
Lord. Yeah.
So there's detail and then there's detail.
Yeah.
So it'll be really interesting to see. Will it be so immersive that we'll feel like we're there?
Yeah.
Who knows, sort of thing.
Good Lord.
So yeah.
I tell you what I do like though is when I first watched the Blu-rays, I love watching the old ones in the sense that we've grown up watching them for years. We all had our VHS Bond collections that we were building up in the 80s and 90s and that, and they looked like how they looked on that format. And then you get Blu-ray, which is such a gigantic leap forward. If you compare a VHS tape, which we were used to for so many years, to a Blu-ray, it's just night and day difference, isn't it? And watching some of those old films, like Dr. No looks amazing in Blu-ray, as does Goldfinger. It's just so incredible. And I can't sort of quite imagine them really looking any better than that. I don't have a powerful enough brain to sort of imagine what 8K Bond would look like. You know what I mean? So I'm intrigued to see what happens when that stuff comes along.
Yeah. I mean, we'll have to obviously get a 4K screening on when they're out and perhaps an 8K further down the line. But yeah, I really don't know how much improvement it's going to be. I mean, obviously it will be. I mean, will you be able to see every sort of blade of grass or everything like that?
I'll have to consult my diary from my early teens when I was keeping frame references to revisit those frames, because that could be fun. That would be fun for sure. But
definitely, yeah.
Interesting.
We could do a podcast episode on that.
If there's anything that deserves its own series of podcasts, it's that, Chris, for sure. And I feel like the download numbers would dwarf everything else we've ever done. But there we go. Yeah. Cool stuff. So that's to look forward to. Maybe we can get some of our brothers and sisters and cousins from America to get some of the 4K Bond action, watch it on their 4K tellies and report back and see what the experience is like. Is it that much better than Blu-ray? Is it, is there not that much difference? Because I don't really know what the difference is between Blu-ray and 4K, to be honest. But there's got to be some geeks out there who know all about that shit and can report back what the dealio is. So good stuff. Righty ho then. Before we crack on, I've got some very important news for you, Chris. Did you know that JBR is now on Instagram?
Yeah. What?
Yes.
Is it really?
It is.
Oh, wow.
And if you wanted to follow JBR on Instagram, all you would have to do is type in James Bond Podcast into Instagram and press follow. And then you'll be subscribed to the JBR Instagram feed.
So what sort of things do they show on the JBR Instagram feed? I mean, it sounds amazing.
It is amazing. Thanks to B-Dobs. Lots of lovely pictures and photos of the history of Bond and loads of JBR meetup stuff and all the rest of it. So make sure you follow JBR on Instagram. Also, Chris.
That sounds amazing.
It does, doesn't it? Also, you can follow us on Facebook. I know this is probably news to you, man.
Seriously?
But if you put James Bond Radio into the search box on Facebook, you can go on the JBR Facebook page, and if you click like, you can follow us on there as well. There's all sorts of stuff going on there, Chris. If you're not in there already, mate, you're seriously missing out.
I am going to be in there today, I tell you.
Good
definitely.
Lad. Also, we've got Twitter. If you do @James Bond Radio on Twitter, you can follow us on there. Likewise with Periscope. There's loads of live stream stuff we've done on there in the past, which you can tune into the back catalogue and watch us walking around Pinewood Studios and you doing some of the recent meetups and stuff like that. All good stuff happening on there. You can come to jamesbondradio.com. You can see all the blog posts. You can find the whole back catalogue of podcasts and all the rest of it and some fun videos and all the rest of it over there. So come to jamesbondradio.com. Subscribe to James Bond Radio on iTunes. Just go to iTunes, put James Bond Radio into the search box and you will find us. It's always useful to us if you could subscribe to us on iTunes, even if you don't really use it to listen to the podcast, because it helps us to rank higher in the charts, which does what, Chris?
it helps us to attract more listeners.
Do you know what?
Tom.
I'm so glad you've actually been listening all these years while I've been doing this spiel. I'm impressed with you, man. Good lad. Also, over on the website, you can leave us a voicemail. There's a little thing on the right-hand side. You can send us a voicemail, whether it's a quote, whether it's a question, whether it's a piece of trivia. If you just want to say hi, leave us a voicemail, especially if you've never done it before. It would be nice to hear, because we've got a lot of regular listeners who always call in, and that's great. We love to hear from you. But what's nice is to hear from the lurkers, the people who've been listening for years, and they've been like, do you know what? I've never phoned in a question, or I've never phoned in a quote. Do it today if you've not done it before, because it's always good to get some fresh blood on the show. That's always good. Also, over on jamesbondradio.com, there's the donate button if you want to help keep the ship JBR afloat. That's always appreciated. Never expected, of course. Other ways you can help is post about JBR on social media, get involved on the Bond forums and talk about JBR episodes, and good old-fashioned word of mouth, because that is the most powerful word of all. There you go.
Mate, I'm just flabbergasted.
Yeah.
I can't believe that this podcast thing is on so many platforms.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm going to sign up to every single
Good lad.
sort of platform. I'm going to have it on iTunes. I'm going to have it on Facebook. I'm going to have it on Twitter. I'm going to have it everything 24 hours a day.
I like that. I like what you did there.
Yeah.
I appreciate it, as do our listeners, I'm sure. Good work. Now, Chris, before we crack on with today's interviews, it is time for a listener trivia question, isn't it? Talking about leaving voicemails. Ooh. Who have we got this week?
Yes. Okay, so this week we have a trivia question from Mr. Shamir Ravji. Ooh. So should we have a listen and see what Shamir has to say?
Let's do it.
Hey, Tom and Chris, this is Shamir Ravji calling from Station C, Canada, with a trivia question. The trivia question is as follows. During the movie Goldfinger, in the junkyard scene, we see a continuity error. Can you guys point out what that continuity error is? Hope you get that one. Thanks. Bye.
Interesting question. Nice to hear from you, Shamir. I don't know if I know that one, actually. Like, there's plenty of little bloopers and little bits and bobs hanging about, isn't there, in the world of Bond that's always quite funny. But that one, specifically the junkyard scene in Goldfinger, doesn't spring to mind. Does that stir any memories for you, Chris?
There's something that I've always thought when watching it, but I don't know if it would be counted as sort of a continuity error or not.
Yeah.
But no, I can't think off the top of my head. I have to see if we can come up with anything.
All right. By the end of this episode. Yeah, good stuff. All right then, Chris. So it's a double barrel interview today, isn't it? Obviously. So first up, this is with Jay Richardson from Body Flight. Now you've been doing some on the spot roving reporting, haven't you? With both of these, you've been in. It's not phone interviews. It's you on location in the heart of the action. So tell me about meeting Jay. How did that come about? What's going on?
Yeah. So basically, I wanted to do the indoor body flight. This is from Quantum of Solace, when Olga Kurylenko and Daniel Craig they went to body flight in Bedfordshire, where they filmed the scenes for they did this sort of parachute jump when they kind of fell out the plane into the sinkhole in Quantum. And I thought, well, that'd be really cool. I thought I'd like to give that a go. And then I thought, well, if I'm going there, why not see if I can arrange an interview, see if anyone that was there from around the time of filming. So I got in touch with Daniel Craig's stunt double, Jay Richardson. Really, really top bloke, really nice bloke. Obviously, while I was there, I went up with a mate and we did a bit of the old indoor skydiving. I sent a photo, which we might be able to show now.
That was a cool photo, absolutely.
So there's me looking a bit, I guess, well, you said a bit Jaws-esque, didn't you, before, in terms of the positioning. And so I had a really good chat to Jay after we'd done that, and so many really interesting stories. And he got to meet Olga as well, and all of this. Bastard. And I know, man. But he said Daniel was lovely and everything like that. And obviously they sort of had to adjust certain things in terms of sort of the filming, which you'll obviously hear in the interview. But yeah, really, really good fun.
All right, wicked.
Really good fun.
So without any further ado, then let's listen to you and Jay Richardson talking a bit of Bond.
Who are you?
My name's Bond. James Bond.
Bond.
James.
Bond, what do you think you're doing?
Keeping the British hand up, sir.
Welcome to James Bond Radio. News, reviews, and discussion of all things 007.
Pussy. As you can see, I have no problem with female authority.
Oh, pipe down, 007.
Do you expect me to talk?
'Mr. Bond, I expect you to cry.
Hello, James Bond Radio listeners. I'm at the Body Flight Centre in Bedford, where they shot scenes for Quantum of Solace, the freefall sequence back in 2008. Now, with me is one of the flight instructors, Mr. Jay Richardson. Hi, Jay. Welcome to the show.
How you doing? Thank you.
Not too bad, not too bad. Now, you were lucky enough to be around when the whole sort of Quantum of Solace thing happened. Can you tell us a bit about that and how that started?
Well, obviously they came down here to check out the wind tunnel for their sequence, and they also needed some testing doing in the tunnel. So one of the guys asked me to test the suit for them and see how it would react. And basically they just brought a suit down with quite a well-known suit make, and they said, can you try it on and see how it would work and what we need to do to modify it? So I put it on there. We went into the tunnel with it, and it was just basically a standard suit. So I went in there, and within like 40 odd seconds, I trashed it for them. So I trashed this well-known suit.
Yeah.
They didn't say anything about it. So they said, what modifications do we need to make? So I just adjusted it for them, told them what would be required for it.
Nice, superb. So that was actual one of Daniel Craig's suits.
Yeah,
Did it fit well?
It fit pretty well. It was really good fit. Actually, it's a really good, well-known suit. I don't know if I'm allowed to say the name of the suit.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, it was a Tom Ford suit.
Yeah.
So,
lovely.
and I said within 40 seconds or so, I trashed it for them.
And did you get to keep the suit?
No, not this
shame.
Not this one. I got to keep some memorabilia from what I had from them.
Nice.
But not the suit.
Not the suit. So how long have you actually worked here at Body Flight?
I've been here now a little bit under 12 years.
And what would you say, just for our listeners, what would you say is involved in sort of the teaching aspect of the flight chamber and everything like that?
Well, it's actually not that much involved, really. Once we stop the briefing off for them, it's just telling them about basic body positions, hand signals we use to help them adjust the body position because it's obviously noisy in there.
Yeah.
So basically, it's just mainly about body position, really.
Yeah. I mean, I was lucky enough to have a go early on today. It's so much fun. I was buzzing, big smile. But it's funny how your senses are a bit on overdrive. So obviously they give you the instructions about arching your back and trying to keep it sort of, your arms and legs raised, but you've got so much going through your head. But I suppose as an instructor, you can just, you get control of them, don't you? In terms you can hang on to the suits and stuff like that.
We've got full control of you guys when you are in there flying. For the moment you're in there, you are actually doing a lot of the work because we're just standing there. And we've got a hand on you just to basically keep you a lot more stable. Yeah. So you're actually doing a lot of the work for yourself. Nice.
And so the question has to be asked, what was Daniel like to work with? And Olga Kurylenko as well, the lovely Olga Kurylenko. Were you here and did you see both of them?
Yeah, both of them are really, really, really nice guys. Obviously, with regards to what I did, I had to teach both of them to fly as well. Nice. So they went basically from a standard beginner like you just done up to the stunt sequences that we did for the film. So how much sort of airtime did Daniel and Olga get? They had a good few hours. Really? Good few hours. They was coming down like once a week, maybe twice a week sometimes, depending how other filming for the film. Trace. And did you get a chance to go out for a drink afterwards with either of them? No, because once they finished here, they have to rush off to do their next sequences for wherever they was, and they were really, really busy guys. Yeah, I can imagine. That's a shame, though. It would have been nice to have gone for a beer afterwards with Daniel. It was that's a really, really down-to-earth guys that were just quite friendly. It wasn't... you get a lot of stars that are like, I am type person, but these guys weren't. They were just like really down-to-earth. They weren't rushing when they were here. They were just... That's what you want to hear, isn't it? You want people who are natural and like just friendly and just normal down to earth. They were very friendly. Obviously, when we're here, we call people by their proper names, like Mr. Craig. Just call us Daniel. Really? Yeah, that's nice. So they were really, really, really down. Yeah. And how pretty is Olga Kurylenko in the flesh? Stunning. Stunning. She is really, really good looking. She is really, really friendly as well. Yeah. Excellent. Oh, you're a lucky man. You're a lucky man. I got really lucky with this one. Yeah. Really, really lucky. So obviously the flight chamber itself, did they need to alter that or amend that in any way to accommodate the filming? Basically what we did with the flight chamber is we actually removed all the windows to accommodate all the film cameras because they used, I think it was the first in the world for their filming sequence that they had these £1 million I think were they snake? There's something like snake cameras or something. Just didn't they alter like they could change on any angle or something? Yeah, like the cameras they used, from what I remember, it was like they were £1 million per camera, and they were filming like a couple couple of thousand terabytes per second for the digital versions of it. So I think it's the first in the world for them.
Wow, that's impressive.
And as I said, we had to remove all the windows to let those cameras in there, and then we whitewashed the walls. Yeah, and then we had to put all these green dots over there for sequences.
So in terms of like the green screen effect, so the walls were inside were white. They weren't green or blue.
No, we actually painted those white.
They painted them white.
With, the green dots on all around for the motion tracking and things like that.
Wow. Now, obviously, you kind of had an idea of how this was going to be used in the film. Yeah. When you actually got to see the film, which I'm assuming you have seen it. Yeah. Yeah, did you?
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant.
Got invited down for that.
Oh, fantastic. And that must have been a cracking night.
Really good night.
And when that sequence came up, how were you like, that's me up there. That bit of that is me.
It is very surreal when you're sitting there watching, thinking, "Well, I've just done that.
Yeah,
so I helped with that," and it's like it's quite a good feeling.
And you can say basically you're James Bond. You know better than any of our listeners. You have been James Bond. It might have only been a slim fraction of a second, but you know
it looks good on the CV. To say he was a stunt double for him.
Oh yeah, definitely, really without a doubt. Well, in terms of when they were actually filming, did you have to take them through any specific, was it sort of general routines, general exercises that you teach anyone, or because obviously there was quite a lot of stuff that they had to go through, I imagine.
It was the basic sequences of basic body position, movement, forward, backwards. We also had to teach them how to fly inverted as well. Ooh, so obviously, as I said, we went through all the basic belly part of it to get them flying stable, and then we had to turn them onto their back to get them onto there, because part of the sequences is we roll over and things like that. Yeah. So they did quite a bit of training.
Nice. And so in the actual sort of finished thing, I'm assuming, you know, some of it was Daniel, some of it was you, obviously some of it was Olga. Did you stunt double Olga as well? Or
no, the stunt double for her was Nikki Berwick.
Okay.
And for her, she took to it really, 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 really quickly.
Really?
She progressed up really, really quick.
Superb. So when you're sort of seeing it on the screen, do you know the parts that you did and the parts Daniel did, and how would you sort of know?
Basically, parts for Daniel and Olga, what you see is when you see them close up in their facial features, that's them actually physically flying. Yeah. And then all the tumbling and the skydiving part, that was me. That was you. And the stunt double.
Excellent. And so were you happy with how it sort of turned out and stuff like that?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah. Excellent stuff.
It took time to practice and then come up with what they wanted. They give me an idea of what they wanted. Yeah. And I said, look, what can you do for us? And then so I just tried different routines and see what would work. Obviously, we had to think about safety of the non-flyer, shall we say? Yeah. Because obviously they've been flying for a while and they were basically new, so I had to come up with a sequence that was safe as well for them. Yeah. And to be able to do together. So were there added safety precautions or anything? I suppose it's safe. It's as safe as it is now. It was very, very safe as it was now, and obviously the only issue we had to do is make sure we don't go anywhere near the windows that were all full with glass that was removed. Yeah. So other than that, it was pretty safe. Everything was done with high safety. Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. And were you sort of working with a stunt coordinator, one of the production crew coordinators? Yeah, the stunt coordinator was Gary Powell, which is, I believe, Nikki Berwick's partner. Oh, right. We come up with working with him. Yeah. He's a really, really nice guy as well. Yeah, I haven't met Gary, but I've seen him in a lot of interviews, and he always comes across as, you know, quite cheeky chappy, but a really nice guy. He's a really good guy. He's been down a few times now. He brings the kids down. They still come down and fly. Oh, okay. So, nice. Excellent. And ever since sort of Quantum has finished, has there been sort of any other films and stuff like that? Yeah, we've done a few sequences for different films, testing for different films. Obviously, some that's still in production that obviously we can't go through. And there's one of the recent ones starring Tom Cruise. He's come down some testing for those. Really? So, are you going to stunt double Tom Cruise as well? No? It was just a test sequence. Wrong colour hair anyway. That's it. I'm a tad taller than he is as well. Yeah, okay. Any of our listeners wanted to come to Body Flight, try out the flight chamber like I did today. What can they expect from the experience? First off, they're going to expect an awesome time. To be honest, it's everyone that comes down here really, really love the activities that we do here at Twin Woods Adventure. There's so much they can do here as a package. With regards to the flying, it's a really, really good thing for them. As I said, everybody loves it. Yeah. I think we've had much of a bad word at all.
Nice. And so, how long sort of flying time would they get? Does it just depend on sort of?
So when they go, basically what they need to do is go onto our website, womensadventure.co.uk, and have a look on there to see what package they want.
Yeah.
Basically, the minimum packages they can do is like a minimum of 2 flights, which is standard that they're going to get. They'll get them out.
And that's about 3 minutes flight time.
There's about a total of about 2.5 minutes. Okay, split over 2 flights. There are packages they can do that they can fly together as long as they're compatible, shall we say. But all they need to do is go onto our website, as I said, Women's Adventure, and they will can have a look on there and see what comes along.
And just to let our listeners know, how much flight time do you think you've had in total in the chamber yourself? I mean, it must be maybe even days. I don't know.
To be honest, I've totally lost count.
Wow.
So I've been here 12 years. It's going to be in the thousands of hours.
Thousands of hours. That's incredible. And is it still exciting? Like, do you get time to do your own quick flight?
Yeah, we've got our own time that we get given. We use it over the course of the month.
Yeah.
Still every day I come to work, I'm actually getting out of bed and going, I'm going to work now.
Yeah.
It's basically because I skydive as well, and I do this. This is my full-time job. I get paid to do my hobby basically.
Yeah. How cool is that? That's just
it's really good.
Yeah, and I guess you can fine-tune your stuff here, and then when you go skydiving,
everything that we do within the tunnel, we do in the sky as well.
Yeah.
So it's that's why a lot of people come here to train. We've got a lot of teams that come down from all around the world to come down here to train with us.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Jay. Cheers for giving the time for all the listeners and everything like that. And I'm happy to say I've shaken the hand of Mr. James Bond for all of the sequence that you did. So that's fantastic.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Appreciate it.
Cheers, everyone.
Mate, how cool was that? I really thoroughly enjoyed that, man. What's that like then when you get into that like wind tunnel thing and it's just holding you up? How does that feel? What is that like?
It's really cool. I mean, the guys who are sort of training us, they could just almost fly up vertically, do spins and all that, and come back down. Obviously, when you're first doing it, you're not allowed to try it, and B, you can't really do it. So you're in the sort of cylinder, you step out, and on the very edges, it's not quite as powerful, so it's not too bad. And you step into it, and you have to almost lean forward, and then as soon as you lean forward, you feel the wind sort of buffeting you, and then you sort of drop into that pose, and they tell you about this pose. It's where you're sort of chest down, arms out, like you've seen in Moonraker, when they're coming down, like that sort of pose. But it is hard to control, so you've got little handles on the suits, and they'll sort of help you sort of go up and down. And then if they think you're okay and you're sort of good enough, they'll sort of let you go, and then you try and hover, and you can kind of sort of spin around and turn side to side. They didn't let me try any spins or anything like that, but it's really good. But the thing is, it's so quick. So I think we did a couple of flights, but you're talking 90 seconds or like a couple of minutes.
Oh, really?
But the best, it's really good when you have to come out, because you have to sort of maneuver yourself towards a doorway, and obviously as soon as you step in that doorway, the wind isn't there, so you can almost fly into the doorway and then hold onto the edges and step through, and suddenly everything's normal again.
Whoa, that's kind of weird.
It's a really cool feeling. It's also super loud, so you can't hardly hear yourself speak. But it's great. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. I definitely recommend it to anyone.
That's cool. And what a stroke of luck that just from the colour of his hair, he got to play Bond in a stunt role, man. That's pretty rad, isn't it? How cool is that? What a stroke of luck.
Yeah, he got to play Bond, and he got to wear the suit, and I mean that's class. That is really class.
Wicked. Good stuff. Nice one. So I suppose it's time to turn it over to interview number 2, which is obviously with Mr. Paul Weston. Now, if you're not familiar with Mr. Paul Weston by name, you will definitely be familiar with Mr. Paul Weston by visuals and one particular quote indeed, which is my favourite. I'm not going to say what it is. I'm going to to save it.
No.
But
we put that little clue out, didn't we, on Facebook last week?
Yeah. And as soon as you would hear that quote, you would instantly know who this man is. There isn't a Bond fan in the world who would not know who this man is based on that quote. No. So how was it meeting Paul then? Because this was another on-the-spot one for you. You went to his house, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Now, I'm not going to say whether he mentions the quote in the interview or not. I'm just going to leave that blank for now. So I actually, it was myself and the incredible Mr. Dan Gale.
Indeed.
We rocked up at Paul Weston's house, and again, absolutely lovely guy. Like literally one of the nicest guys you could ever meet. And Dan was great because he bought all of his gear, so we had a 2-camera setup. We had obviously good radio mics, real professional deal.
Dan's got all the proper gear, isn't he, man? It's not like when we've done it in the past.
Has.
It's been a couple of mobile phones and I hope for the best.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a really good setup. Paul had his own little office, and all over the wall are photos of him doing all the Bond stuff, doing, this guy's been in Bond, Star Wars, Superman, Aliens, Indiana Jones. He's done everything, and it had all this stuff of him on the wall, and it was incredible. And he had like his stunt awards as well and stuff like that. So so we had a little chat beforehand. We'd obviously met him before at Pinewood a couple of times.
Nice.
And and he was really game for it, man. Really game for it. And I mean, this is probably one of my favourite interviews, actually, in terms of, he's obviously a big fan of Bond, and just being a stuntman is probably one of the most interesting jobs in the world. It really is. And it's one that I kind of wish I'd sort of thought about 20 years ago. Right,
you strike me as the kind of lunatic who would be in, like you, because you are into all that stuff. For me, as I always say, I like to have my feet firmly on the ground. I don't like jumping around and all that kind of stuff. But you live for all that stuff. I feel like what turns you away from being like, do you know what? I'm going to be a fucking stuntman. Yeah,
you have to do a huge amount to qualify. You have to reach like the equivalent of a black belt in a fighting or a martial art, and you have to reach a really high level in several other things. So like a master scuba diver, equivalent of a Olympic gymnast or that sort of thing. And in several different categories: horse riding, driving, all of this. So it is doable, but it's a lot of time, and it's also a lot of money to get your qualification.
Right, gotcha.
And I think at the time I didn't think I had much of either. So that's probably why. But I think looking back, it's definitely something that I would have enjoyed. But just hearing the stories that this guy has are absolutely incredible. Obviously, the main thing we focus on is Bond. It was one of my favourite interviews, I think.
Well, I tell you what, man, it's been as at the old JBR meetups, the remaking of Bond films has been a little bit of a staple that's been happening at the JBR meetups. So I feel like maybe that's something that needs to happen, is recreating one of the great Bond stunts, obviously within safety limits, and then you can do the stunt, man, and then that'll be it. Yeah.
Well,
we'll get you to jump off a crane or something.
I know what one it's going to be already, Tom.
Oh yeah, go on in.
Yeah, well,
or
I
is it
need
a top
someone
secret?
else in the scene. No,
Oh.
it's going to be... maybe it should be. I'll tell you after the show.
All right, very nice. Yeah, all right, keep that one top secret. Does it involve, does the other person be a Bond girl? Because that's the kind of stunt that I'd like to recreate.
Really? No. We do need a Bond girl in the scene, but she wouldn't be involved in the stunt.
Oh, okay.
So that's a hint.
Right. Interesting. Cool stuff then. Okay, then. So let's have a listen to Mr. Paul Weston.
It's my absolute pleasure to introduce a stuntman extraordinaire and absolute legend, Mr. Paul Weston, to the James Bond Radio. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the invite.
Not at all. It's great to have you on board. Now, you've been involved with the Bond films for many a year. In fact, well, obviously not just Bonds. We're talking Star Wars, we're talking Indiana Jones, Aliens, loads and loads of stuff. So what we'll do is we'll start with some quick fire questions.
Yes.
Which we do with all our guests. And it'll be really interesting to see what you say for some of these. So with question number 1.
Yes.
Mr. Paul Weston, what is your favourite James Bond film?
I would think it's very difficult because there are so many facets of each Bond, each character, each villain. But I did like From Russia with Love. I thought that was a good Cold War sort of type movie, so I did enjoy that.
Yeah.
But there are so many that you like for different reasons.
I think it's a tricky one. Sometimes it depends on the mood, what mood you're in. But From Russia with Love, I think for me, it's right up there. I mean, and it's so close to the book as well, which is fantastic. Which smoothly leads us on to question 2. I don't know if you've read any or all of the Fleming books, but did you have a favourite Bond book at all?
No, not really. No, I didn't read too many of them, but I was lucky enough to stay at the Golden Eye for 2 weeks.
Oh, you've got to tell us a bit about that. So what was that like?
I was shooting a movie. I was directing second unit of a Island Records movie called Countryman in Jamaica, and I had one more day to go, and that was it. I was then flying off to LA to meet some friends, and Chris Blackwell said to me, "If you do another day, I'll give you the keys to Golden Eye, and you can stay there as long as you like. I'll give you a car. You can go over there." And stay there. All right, James Bond fan, you can, at the Golden Eye. So I said, yes, okay. So I did the extra day shoot and drove over to Ocheria and along the coast there to the Golden Eye. And it was the same, I had the same cook that was there when Fleming was there, a little old lady. She was wonderful, told me some lovely stories. Because after Fleming left, then Bob Marley took over, and she said that was crazy. And then obviously Chris Blackwell owned it. But it was wonderful to stay there, and I slept in their bedroom, in the actual Fleming, in the Fleming house. Yeah, okay. So I had the whole house and the cove, and I had Ramsey, who was the retainer and looked after the 7 acres, who used to take me out fishing. And I had a housekeeper and a cook.
So you basically were living the life of Fleming while you were there.
Absolutely. It was wonderful. At night, I'd be laying in bed, and in the corner is the desk where you wrote the Bonds, and there's no glass, it's all slats. So you just open the slats, and at night you've got fireflies going, and you can hear little frogs going. But it was just a wonderful experience to be there for 2 weeks. In the end, I thought, I got to leave.
That must have been difficult.
Yes, yeah. So yes, that was a wonderful experience to stay at the Golden Eye and enjoy it.
Did you manage to sort of walk down to the cove? You know, he had his own private beach and go for a swim.
Yeah, I was there every day, and swimming and snorkeling, and it's just a private little beach and a bay and. Yes, it was really stunning.
So on to question 3. Now, this one could be very tricky. Obviously, you've had a lot of experience working with a lot of them. But if you had to choose one, who would you say is your favourite actor to have portrayed James Bond?
And my favourite actor friend was obviously Roger Moore, because I started in the business with him, and he hadn't changed over the 50 years that I knew him. So, yes, I mean, although Pierce I've also known for probably 40 years when he first started in the business. But I think Roger was my favourite. But, you know, that's a friend when we all have our own ideas of what the character of Bond should be, and most people, I would think, would say that Sean Connery was the original, and therefore, you know, I always say that the character of Bond was portrayed by several people, each one bringing their own little something to it. With Sean Connery, he would shoot a woman in the back and with no compunction at all. Roger would ask them to turn round.
Yeah, that is true.
And Pierce would ask them to turn around and have a joke with them, and then do it. But they all had their own sort of characters that they lent to it. I remember when Timothy started, we were expecting Pierce Brosnan, but because of the problems.
It was a very short turnaround, wasn't it?
Yes. We had Timothy, who was great. But he brought an edge to it, and he wanted to do what Daniel Craig is doing now, is to make it heavier. And if he got whacked in the face, he wanted bruises to last for all the scenes that would last for. But Cubby said, no, you know, we just come from Roger Moore, who does that, and off he goes again, and he looks immaculate. It is a fantasy for men. to have, all the excitement and the women and the cars and whatever. We would then started to compete with Bourne Identity and things like that. So the realism had to come into it eventually. But I think Timothy did a great job. He was a good actor, and I think he would have gone on to do another couple, and he would have eased the more not violent but more solid action into it.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah, I think you're right, and you're completely right in terms of everyone bringing their own style. And that's it, because you're never going to get two the same, and that's what makes it interesting.
Yes,
that's what makes it, the longevity of it, go for such a long time, just because everyone's different, and that's great. So question 4 is a very tricky one. It could be, potentially, and you're allowed 2 answers.
Right.
Okay. So question 4 is, who is your favourite James Bond girl? And you can either have the one that you think is the best character and the one that sort of gets a heart rate going a little bit, if you like. Or they could be the same, one and the same.
The heart rate was the honeychild rider coming out of the sea for a young guy as I was at the time. Ursula Andress was the image at the time. Yeah. But I think Octopussy herself was a good actress and a solid performer. So
well, I mean, 2 cracking answers there. Ursula Andress, I think it was just so iconic, wasn't it? But there was a reason for it.
Yes,
and obviously she pulled that off. And I think the good thing about Maud is her the chemistry that she and Roger had.
Yes,
it was perfect, and they were a little bit similar ages, and I think that helped it immensely as well.
It was more realistic. I remember when we had. What was the name? The young girl, Holly Johnson.
Oh yeah,
Lynn,
Holly.
And she was lovely, absolutely lovely. I saw her a few weeks ago. She was absolutely stunning. But the age difference was too much, and Roger felt a bit uncomfortable with it. And it did show, but it was good performances from both of them. So.
Definitely, and she hasn't aged a day, has she?
No, she looks great.
Amazing, yeah. But there we are. Okay, so question 5. Now, again, this one might be a bit tricky. If you had to choose one scene in the entire series, what would you say would be your favourite?
Apart from mine, you mean?
Yeah, for all of yours. Yeah.
No, I think the iconic. You expect me to talk?
I mean,
the laser. I think I mean that sums up Bond really. Yeah. I mean the attitude and it was so well played as well. So yes, I think that.
I think that's a brilliant answer, and it's hard to imagine a scene that's so well known watching it for the first time, because I think if you could wipe your mind and suddenly you see that scene, you would just get the suspense from it and everything. Obviously you get that now, but you know it so well, and I think that would hold up to anyone's first time viewing, and they'll be like,
yes,
particularly for a man.
It was like putting the perils of Pauline or whatever on the railway track, and the train's coming. So I think that encapsulated all the excitement and danger and fun.
Yes, definitely scary. Okay, so a couple more questions for quickfire. Number 6. What out of all the places you've been, either locations or actual sets that you filmed on, do you have a favourite location or a favourite set piece? So
many. But Acapulco and Sanchez's house in Acapulco was absolutely stunning. I've never seen a house like it, with the waterfall around the edge. Each room was done differently. The helicopter pad on the top overlooking the swimming pool. It was just fantastic, and it was just a pleasure to work there, and the people were so nice, and so yes, and the railway.
Oh yeah, that's it. They've got a little cart going up the hill. And the amazing thing about that house is it like marble everywhere, or pretty much marble everywhere?
Even the helicopter pad was marble, and it was just stunning. And he was a friend of Cubby's. That's the only reason he allowed us to shoot there.
Wow.
So that was lovely to have their dinner there on the top of a glass table being held up by a camel.
Not a live one. Hopefully.
Not a live one, no. But yes, a sculptured camel's back. It was just stunning.
And it's the sort of place where if Ken Adam had been around, or obviously Peter Lamont, and said, right, we want to design a villain's house, it's already there sort of thing with that house, wasn't it? Which is great. Fantastic. Okay, so final question of the quickfire round. What is your earliest memory of James Bond? Now, do you remember when Dr. No first came out, or was it something else? The first one you saw in the cinema, or anything like that?
I remember it so well. I lived just across the road from the Regal cinema in Edmonton. So myself and my wife Dolly, we went across to see this new film of James Bond. I can't tell you, when I came out, I was Bond. I loved the suits, I loved the Savile, he looked immaculate. So I'm coming out and crossing across the road, and as I go into my house, the next door neighbour rushes out and says, somebody's just stolen my van. And they've gone down, and it was a cul-de-sac, so they had to go around a sort of block to come back out again.
Right.
So as I looked up the road, sure enough, this van came, it was an old Bedford van, came round the corner, screaming down the road, and it was a narrow road, and I was Bond. I stood out in front of it, and he skidded to a halt.
Wow.
I wasn't going to move. No. I was Bond. It skidded to a halt. I swung open the side door, grabbed hold of him, pulled him out on the floor, and he looked up at my next door neighbour and said, "Hello, Denny." So he said, "What are you doing stealing my van?" He said, "Well, I was only going to use it tonight. I would have brought it back tomorrow." And it was a friend of his that was stealing the van to use it for something. So yeah, I was Bond.
Wow.
And it just... I've been like that ever since.
Yeah,
I want to be Bond.
Yeah.
But that affected me only for the fact that it was fantasy. It was every man's ideal of what he would love to be.
Yeah.
I always say that, especially with Sean, women want to go to bed with him, and men want to be him.
Definitely.
So it's, they're both in love with the character of Bond. And I think that's what's gone on through the years, is that each one has brought something to it that has kept the audience, men and women, interested in that character.
Wow. Well, what a story that is. That's incredible.
Yeah,
and you just come out of the cinema feeling Bond. You're like, right, I'm going to dish out some justice. But I mean, it was lucky the guy obviously was his friend. Otherwise, I think he would have been... Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so we'll move on to the main sort of meat of the interview. Now, obviously, you were involved in the film industry for many a year. Was that always an aspiration, and how did you initially get involved in the whole sort of film industry side of things?
I was an engineer. It's a long story, but I'll make it very short. I wasn't happy where I was working in a factory in North London. And I decided that I had to do something to do another job somewhere in the world. So I opened up the Evening Standard in those days that had situation vacants all over the world. So I thought, I'm going home, close my eyes and point down, and whatever job it is, no matter where it is in the world, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go after it until they say, no, find something else. I'm going to go after it. So I go home, open up, close my eyes and point down, and there it was a little box, and it said, "The London School of Charm requires models, Leicester Square." So I thought, I can't be a model. I'm it's a sort of tough sort of group in North London. No, I can't do it. But to be true to myself, I said I would phone up, and until they say no, I'm going to go after it. So I thought, as soon as they hear my voice, they'll say no. So, "Hello, darling, I understand you want models." She said, "Yes, come along." She hadn't said no. So I thought, right, well, I'll go up there. It's a night out in the West End, and early 60s. It was like, yeah, I'll do this. So I thought, as soon as they see me, they'll say, "No, thank you very much." And I'll be able to go back to pointing it down. So I went in there, and it was a lovely agency, lots of beautiful girls around, and I thought, oh, this is not bad. So I went in there and had an interview with Mr. Gordon Eden Ween, who was the proprietor, and he didn't say, no, get out. I thought, I've got to get out of this somehow. And he said, yes, we're doing a 3-month course. We want young guys coming in. It's Tuesdays and Thursdays, 7 to 10 o'clock, 10:30. So I thought, I've got to get out of this somehow. So I said, what about wages? How much am I likely to earn? He said, £4 or £5. So I thought, this is it. I can get out of this.
Yeah.
I said, thanks all the same. You're very kind, but I'm earning £12 a week plus bonuses.
Yeah.
And he looked at me in an old-fashioned way and he said, no, £5 an hour. And I thought, wow, I might think about this. So I did, and I thought, well, I'll go along with it. It was going to be a laugh. I didn't tell anybody. So I used to go up there Tuesdays and Thursdays, and they taught me how to walk and react to things, for commercials. So they took me on, and that was so I became a fashion and photographic model. Then my agent sent me to understudy. Before that, I was doing walk-ons on television. That's when I worked on Z cars when it was live. A lot of emergency wall 10s and all the compacts, all those early TV things. And then I got joined the FAA and became a walk-on, like an extra on films. And that's when I danced with Charlie Chaplin. I sang with the Beatles on Help.
Wow.
So, that was my getting into the film industry. Yeah. And then my agent I had at the time sent me to understudy Roger Moore on the Saints. And he wanted to direct an episode. And we needed somebody just to play his little part with the other actors. So I did that, and I really enjoyed it. And I remember standing, because I didn't know what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And I remember standing on the stage, I think it was stage 6 at Elstree, in the afternoon, looking around. I had such a good time with Roger. Was so funny and so welcoming. And I thought, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. Yeah. And that's what I've done. So
wow, it's
been interesting.
And did Roger impart any sort of really good advice for you?
No, just be there and enjoy yourself. He was a good director, apart from anything else, but he knew how to treat people. He was a people person, and he was outrageous. I mean, funny. We used to. He would be in a barroom scene, and he would be talking to a guy or a girl, and he would be playing with the soda siphon, and then suddenly, when the shot was done, he'd press the button, and he'd go, psh, I'm awfully sorry. So he'd get people wet somehow. Yeah. He would. So at the end of one of the series, he said it was a party scene or in a bar scene. And everyone was there, and it was the end of picture party we were going to have after the shooting, which we did. 5:30, everyone came into the bar area, and he stood in the middle, and the champagne was around, and said, thank you very much, guys and girls. This is my last series. I'm not going to do any more. It wasn't, but he said, I won't be doing any more, so cheers. It's been a pleasure. And as he went to drink, water hit him from every angle. From the grid, they were hoses. People with buckets, they soaked him. And he just stood there, absolutely soaked, and he took it in good part.
That was good.
But he was a lovely man to have known all those years.
Oh, that's incredible. Yeah, lovely. And at least he can take it as well as dish it out, which is important as well, I think. So moving on to the world of Bond then, I guess your first brush with James Bond was the unofficial 1967 spoof, Casino Royale. So can you tell us a bit about how that came about and what you were involved in with that film? Yes, on Casino Royale, it was a spoof. I mean, it was such a send-up. I was an extra,
and I was asked to go down there to be in the casino scenes in an evening suit, and so we're running around there and getting splattered and knocked around and whatever. And then they wanted Indians to come in on parachutes and come in and we'd have a fight. It was just crazy. But it went on for about 6 weeks, I think, just doing the second unit of that in that casino area. And you got people going backwards and forwards, sort of actors, George Raft and my mother's favourite, George Raft, And so, you're meeting these people. And I remember we had a photo shoot outside an old vintage car, and we had all the beautiful girls around George Raft, who was flicking up the coin and catching it. And the girls were sitting around, and we were supposed to be these hoods on the side of the car. And one of the girls was sitting at the back there, and the photographs are being taken. And one of the girls put his hand on his head, like he went, "Don't touch the rug, babe. Don't touch the rug." his wig was a
little bit out of alignment.
What we had to do as Indians is that the tent catches on fire, and we're going ooh around it, and all our backs were on fire. And so, yes, that was my involvement in the first Bond.
That's great, and it's good because you're getting, like you mentioned, you're using flames. You're getting lots of different ones, the fighting and the choreographing of everything. And an absolute crazy scene, that one. It's just, it looks as if no planning has been done. It looks as if, right, everyone just go and do your own thing. Right. It's that sort of madness.
And it went on and on.
Which is great. And then after that, you obviously came involved with the official Eon production of Bond. Now, you were sort of in and around for quite a few films. I think You Only Live Twice, maybe Majesties, Live and Let Die, A Man with the Golden Gun, and sort of doing a bit of work on there. But the first sort of major sort of stunt work you did with the Eon Bond films was The Spy Who Loved Me.
Yes, yeah.
So you, as far as I'm aware, you sort of played one of Stromberg's guards, and there was a bit with the monorail and the massive battle at the La Paris tanker set. Now, what was that like? Because what a huge and amazing battle that was to be a part of.
It was just the sheer size of the 007 stage, and to be filled with 3 submarines, and then Adam's beautiful set around it. It was. You just walked on there, and you knew this was big, and it was going to get blown to pieces. So yes, we were guards, and all different guards. We were the Americans. We were the English. We were the baddies in different coloured overalls. Yeah, I remember 3 of us being up on about 36 feet up at the end of 007 stage, falling. Explosions go off, and there was Terry Plummer, Greg, and myself at the top, and the explosion goes off, and we've got to fall 36 feet into the water of the tank. But it was only like 7 foot deep at most, and we had the rails underneath where the subs go backwards and forwards on. So we had to hit flat. We couldn't go in deep. So in the explosion, you go off and you just time it so that you're getting over onto your back to hit as flat as possible. And we had wetsuits underneath. But myself being the lightest, I was fine. I went off and hit the water. Greg and Terry Plummer hit, and they were. Greg was black and blue all the way up one side where he hit it so hard, but that's what you had to do. It's all the explosions were difficult because we were coming off trampolines, we were coming down ropes, we were doing explosions halfway, between the two. But it was great fun. Great fun to do.
It must have been like there's so many sort of stuntmen involved in the one scene as well. So in terms of sort of the mini sort of trampolines, mini trampettes, is it a case of right? So they'll cue, you're running, and then so you know that everyone sort of goes, hits the trumpet, leaps over the railing, catch you coming down.
Yeah, and the special effects, behind it, ready to as you hit. Then they hit the button and the explosion goes off behind you, and you travel over the rails or whatever. One was nice, which I loved doing, was the mini moke that went into the side. I was the guy on the back, and I knew I could take off, and I knew I could get as far out in the water as possible. Yeah. And that's always good. That's a nice one. You get the flick as it turned over, and off I went into the midair. It was lovely.
Brilliant. Lovely.
Yeah, enjoyed that one.
So then following that, obviously there was Moonraker. Now this time you got to double Richard Keel. And there's a great story behind this. So can you tell us sort of what scene that was and what you had to do for that one?
Well, most of the unit were in France doing the stuff, but they had to bring the two cable cars into the studio. It was about 50 feet up, and they were hooked from the ceiling, but they were 16 feet apart. And Martin, who had doubled for Jaws before, was in France, so they asked me to do it. But they were 16 feet apart and that high up in the air. So you can't just stand and jump 16 feet. So I had to put a mini trampoline on one side of on my side of the cable car. And I had to stand on the cables, which was a bit of a balance. I had a thing hanging down from the ceiling, and I had to stand there and jump onto the mini trampoline, which was a little tiny one, to make sure I got over the 16 feet and landed on the other side, which was fine. I thought I could do it. So I was up there, the Jaws outfit, everything on, and standing on the cables, and Arthur Weston shouted up, "Paul." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Have you got the teeth?" I said, "What teeth?" He said, "Jaws' teeth." I said, "I haven't got Jaws' teeth. Why would I have Jaws' teeth?" He said, "Well, but what can we do? We might get a glimpse of them." And I said, "Well, they didn't have any. Props didn't have any." So I said, "All right, well, give me a quarter of a orange peel and some silver paper from a cigarette pack." So they handed it down from the grid, and I made up this thing of silver paper and orange peel. So I said, "Okay," I put it in my mouth, and I've got caps, and it was like electric going on. And I said, okay. It was nothing. I said, "Come on." I took them out. I said, "What are you waiting for?" And I said, "Oh, we're running. We're waiting for you." I said, "Just shout action. Just shout action." And I put it back in, and I jumped, and all I wanted to do was get across to get these out of my mouth. And I landed okay on the other side. I stubbed my toe, but it was okay. And on the other side, we had a sort of small Roger Moore and a small girl, so that when I landed, I looked like 7'3". Yeah. So it worked eventually. But,
I suppose in a way it was quite good that your mind was just thinking about the teeth, and you didn't have to sort of worry about the jump almost. That's crazy. So was that set up in studio? Was it an exterior outside of the studio?
It was in the studio.
And did you have sort of like a foam pit or anything?
Yeah, I had a crash mat on the bottom. Just in case.
That's still
from that height. I would have. It wouldn't have been comfortable.
No, and balancing on the cable to hit a tiny trampette to then go across. Yeah. Because with the trampoline, sometimes they can send you, unless you sort of hit it, obviously in the sweet spot, they can send you everywhere. So
that was the biggest problem, is that I would take off and not reach the other side or hit the side and fall down. But,
great scene.
It was a good job to have done, as many of them are.
Yeah, brilliant. And then obviously after Moonraker, we did a bit of Few Eyes Only. Now there was a bit where you were in Meteor in the monastery. And there's a great fight, there's a really good fist fight with you and Roger, or obviously the stuntman playing Bond. And you have a good fist fight and crash through the window. Now, obviously these sort of things, they take a lot of time in terms of choreographing and everything like that. So what sort of preparation is needed for sort of a stunt fight like that?
Well, with the arranger was Bob Simmons on that one, and we went up there and we talked through what we were going to do and what his ideas were, and I worked it out with Martin, who was going to double for Roger, where we were going to go and who was going over the balcony and who was going to go through the window, and we worked it out. And it was myself and Roger going to go through the window. which was fine. So then we had to work out the fight itself, which I did with. But because it was so close and Roger's so good, well, I shot it all with Roger.
Really? Yeah, that's great.
That was all Roger's.
Oh, wow.
He could throw a punch.
Yeah.
And he would always just reach out and just touch the side of their face or their shoulder, so he knew the distance, and then he would follow through. Yeah. And he was great. Didn't like falling over, but he could throw a good punch and take a good punch.
Yeah.
So yeah, we worked it all out with him, and then because it was a stained glass window in the monastery, we then had to decide how we were going to go through it and what we were going to land on. So we put the boxes up inside, and because at that point is when Martin Grace took over just for the headbutt and taking through the glass.
The glass head smashes, doesn't he?
Yes.
Not great.
So yeah, I was. The problem was that I was going down with my neck head first, and he was going on his back, which was fine. And when I looked around the other side, how far we were falling and what we were falling into, Bob Simmons had made it very solid, and I thought my neck would, if I catch it wrong, my neck's going to go. So I asked him to make it softer, which he did, and so yeah, we finished up doing a nice fight and then a nice crash through, and landing safely on the other side.
Wow!
And when you see it in the film, we land on. Roger and I land on the settee. He gets up and walks away, and I'm dead for some reason.
Right. So Roger didn't do the crash through the window, did he?
No.
I was going to say.
No,
yeah.
The last little bit when we Martin and I landed, and then Roger gets up and walks away.
Yeah. As easy as pie, just like that. Brilliant. And the next one. So obviously, Octopussy with the next film. You had a lot of involvement. Now this time you got to double Bond himself, double Roger in quite a few number of the scenes. I think probably most famously was the train scene. So this time you were running across the roof, hanging on the side. Can you tell us a bit about that? Because I know there are a lot of amazing stories about that particular scene.
Yes, on Octopussy, Martin had his accident on the side of the train, and they called me in to take over and coordinate the whole thing and double for Roger, which was fine. I was quite happy to do. The train was going at 35 miles an hour, and what we had to do is he gets out, he climbs along the top and back down again, and then he gets on top again, under bridges, over pipes, and then comes off at the end. So I had to work it out how we were going to do this with the second unit director, Arthur Worcester, and we set up cameras on the side of the train. I came up with a lovely shot. I thought, a nice low angle, and you'll see me hanging because we had no wires or anything. It's all freehand. So I'm climbing alongside the train, and I thought it'd be nice if I hit a bush and I fall down, and you see my toes hit the side of the track with low angle camera. It looked fantastic. So Arthur said, "Yeah, great." So we set up the camera, and off we go, 35 miles an hour. I slip down, drop, and my toes are hitting the side of the thing. And Roger's got, a very nice pair of ordinary shoes. And my toes, I can't tell you, were black and blue afterwards. I thought I won't volunteer for much more than this. But yeah, it was great fun. Climbing alongside the train, then getting on the top of it. The inside, the most dangerous job I've ever done. I left it as late as too late, really. For sensibility, was climbing out of the flap on the top of the train and seeing the bridge coming towards me, and then deciding whether to go back in or come out, stand up, and then duck down under the bridge. The bridge was only, 2 foot above the train itself, doing 35 miles an hour. So we set it up, camera on the train behind me, and so looking towards the bridge. So I worked it out that I was going to have a guy's assistant sitting on the side of the track, and when my truck got to a certain point, he would say now on the walkie-talkie. I would lift the flap up, look to see if I've got plenty of time, climb up, shut the lid, and duck under the bridge. So I said, okay, turn over, and we did it. And now, and I opened up, plenty of time, shut the lid, under the bridge. I thought, I can do this closer. I can get much closer than this. Yeah. So, okay, you say the same, and I'll take my timing. So we drive along, take the train back up again, off we go again, 35 miles an hour. He says, now I go 1, 2, lift up. Yeah, okay, boom, and I get under. I think I can do this actually. I can do this even tighter. So I said the same again, back to number 1. Off go 35 miles an hour. He says, now I go 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, and I just, you can see me get out, and I don't have time to shut the lid. I just duck underneath it. It was fractions of a second. Just out. I would have been wiped out. But I did it, and it was just me and the bridge. It was like, how close can I get this? What's the best shot? And then we come out the other side, and each time I'm on top of the train, there's a pipe across the middle of the track. So I lay down and go underneath it. And I said to Arthur and the boys, I said, if they see this on rushes, they're going to say, Paul, about this pipe. So sure enough, 2 days later, I get a call. Paul, about that pipe, you think you could dive over it? I said, I'll give it a go. So you're doing it 35 miles an hour. And for me, it's all relevant because I'm just taking a couple of paces running. But the pipe is 2 feet or so, 2'6" above the track, is coming at me at 35 miles an hour. So I've got to time it so that I'm in the air when it goes underneath me. If I jump too soon and my feet come down on it, I'm going to be knocked off. And there's no safety. You're 14 feet above the track. It ain't going to be good. So, if I leave it too late, it's going to hit me anyway. So I said to the boys, I said, look, forgive me if I chicken out. I'll do what I can, but let's have a go. And sure enough, it came at me 35 miles an hour. I timed it just right, leapt up in the air, and it just went underneath me, and I hit back on again. The problem was hitting back on again, bouncing.
Yeah.
But I did it okay, so that was another good one to have done.
Both looked amazing. Both looked incredible. And the other thing as well is the train roof is sort of curved. Right, yes. So if it was nice and flat, you wouldn't you could just land and you'll be okay. Yeah. But obviously you've got to land and try and take a hold of something before you.
And we had nothing to hold on to it, so it was a matter of just bracing as much as you could.
And you also did a stunt towards the end of the train scene where you had to sort of leap off again, didn't you, with Wayne Michaels, I think it was. Yeah.
So the boys, I think, and Dickie Graydon, bless his heart, tells a story that he did it, which he never did. But they'd set it all up, and they put there was 2,000 boxes alongside the railway track, and they were deciding, they did that. It was probably 150 yards of time to come out, to come off. So they didn't know when they were going to come off, and it would, so they were covering themselves with rows of boxes. I mean, just boxes. So now it's come down to me to do. So I look at it, and in that case, where would you put a camera? So I knew exactly what I was going to do. At the end of the boxes, or the start of the boxes, I would have a sandbag, which I did, and doing 30 miles an hour, just throw the sandbag. And where the sandbag hit is where we were going to hit. So put the camera on the other side of that. You didn't need any, you only need the boxes where you're going to land. Yeah. So that's what we did. And we had Wayne Michaels doubling for one of the twins. And he had tremendous courage, because I'm facing where we're going. He's got his back to it, and there's no boxes. He can't see it. So I said to Wayne, look, trust me, I'll put you on. We'll both go off in the boxes, but before the camera. So he said, yeah, do okay. And with great courage, I got hold of him. I said, now. And as he went, I had to leave my toes on for a fraction of a second longer. If we'd have gone together, we would have both hit, and that would have been painful, falling on top of each other. So I had to leave it just a fraction of a second. So I overtook him and landed in front of the cameras. And it worked out perfectly, and he was very good.
Yeah,
great courage.
And I guess very thankful for you for helping him at the right time as well.
Yeah, it must have been daunting for him just to be pushed off with nothing underneath him.
But it's another good example that shows just how brave sort of stuntmen are and their situations.
And we trust each other. We have to trust each other.
Definitely. Yeah. There are a couple of stunts later on in the film which I think definitely deserve a mention as well. There was one where you obviously double Roger again, sliding down the banister. You're heading towards this big, the big sort of thing at the bottom, and that must have been rather scary. So how did that scene sort of work out?
Well, it was we set it up so that we'd do the close-ups of Roger, and I would be holding his foot, because it was difficult to sit on there firing a gun and balance and come down at that speed. And obviously we couldn't have Roger, hitting the pineapple at the end, because it was solid. It was plaster, and Johnny Richardson had a detonator underneath it. And what was going to happen is that as I'm sliding down towards it, at the last minute, Roger's supposed to shoot it off, and it's my future marriage was in the special effects man's hands, because if he hadn't have blown that off, I would have hit that quite hard.
Yes.
But we did Roger coming down. I held his the legs, foot, just to balance him on there, and then I did the rest of it coming down, and I was looking at that plaster at the last moment before he actually blew it off, and I slid off the end. So yeah, that was tricky. It would have been painful otherwise.
Did you buy him a drink afterwards for getting the
I did
right?
indeed, yes. So yes, he's a friend for life.
Yeah, I think he must be. There was also another stunt where I think you were sort of swinging on a rope and you had to go through this shuttered window. Yes. Now I heard there was a story behind that with the effects department. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, the carpenters had made balsa wood shutters, which I'm supposed to crash through. And they looked pretty solid. But I said, have you cut them? They said yes. So it was like probably 12 feet, 14 feet in the air. I was on the step ladder and going to swing from the step ladder through the window, through the gap, which was about 4 feet. So I had to bunch up and go through it. And the camera was on a rostrum, on a platform, scaffold, level with the window. And the focus puller was a friend of mine, went over, got a step ladder, went up to the window, measured it, and then he got down and he measured the floor. So I said, what are you doing? He said, well, that's where you're going to finish up. I might as well keep doing both. I said, I'm going to go through that window, don't worry. He said, all right, we'll see. Turn over, action. I went off, feet like that, and I went down the wall, hit the floor, and he went, told you. So they hadn't cut it enough, so I had to go back and they really cut it. And so finally I went through and kicked it through and got in.
Nice.
But it was funny. He thought he was quite clever.
Yeah. I bet he felt sorry for you afterwards. No, not at all. So I guess you must have been busy on another film when A View to a Kill came around.
Well, I was supposed to do it up until like 3 weeks before. I was doing, Martin was going to do the first unit, I was doing the second unit. And then for some reason, Martin wanted to do it on his own. He didn't want, he was going to do first and second unit.
Yeah.
So what can you say?
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's
Fair
up
enough.
to you.
Yeah.
And so, no, I didn't do it, although I was, as I say, was set up for it and was going to do it.
But then you came back, obviously, The Living Daylights, stunt supervisor. Again, you got to double Tim with a new Bond. I mean, the pre-titles for me, I really enjoy the Octopussy one, but I think the Living Daylights pre-titles is probably the best in the series. Like the action and the mini story within it is fantastic, and I think a great deal of that is down to you and the stunt guys with the Land Rover and the work on that. Can you tell us a bit about that as well, because that is a cracking scene.
Yes, Living Daylights, when we had Timothy for the first time, and I met Timothy out there, and we decided we had 4 minutes to make Timothy Dalton the new Bond, and I could have tied him on the truck, and he wouldn't have been able to move, and we could have done lots of stuff that we wouldn't have allowed him to do. But I trusted him. When I first met him, I thought, yeah, he's sensible. He'll do exactly what he's told, which he did. And he had faith in me, and I had faith in him that he would do exactly what I asked him to do. So when it came to the jumping on top of the Jeep, we had obviously doubles for that. But coming down the hill, all the close-ups we had for him, I put handholds on the top of the Jeep. The problem is deciding what would be the safest for him. If he was tied into the Jeep and it turned over, it's not good. If he's not tied to it, at least he's got a chance of coming off where he wants to come off. But as he's going down there, I had a platform on the other side of the Jeep that you couldn't see, and I was on there. I was wired on, and every time his leg came over too far, I'd whack it, so he was knew that he was not going to do too much of a dangerous stunt. Yeah. But he was able to move along the top, do the cutting of the canvas, and then put his head in. And then from then on, we had a pair of legs, and we did a lot of stuff with the stunt doubles. But he showed great courage, and he was very good, and he showed he was Bond from the beginning.
It was a cracking scene, and obviously you got to sort of double him a bit on and in that particular scene, I think we see you briefly about 20 times as various different sort of.
I had about half a dozen stunts with me in Gibraltar, but you never got enough, So when he's coming down the hill, I had to have. Paul Heisman get knocked down by the Jeep as he's going through the gate, and Paul was the guy shooting at the barrier. But that's difficult, because if you've got a Jeep, a high-fronted vehicle like that, is to do a knockdown and hit the windscreen and bounce off. You can't do it. I mean, you'd have to leap up in the air. Yeah. So what I did was I put a mini trampoline attached to the front of the Jeep. So we did the close-ups of going towards him, where he goes like that. And then I stood him on the front of the mini trampoline. And as we got down to the place, he bounced, and then bounced off the mini trampoline, hit the windscreen, and bounced off on the side. So there's ways of doing these things safely that still give you the excitement of a knockdown. And Paul did a great job on that. So then when we're going down, I wanted people to be running in and out across the front of the Jeep. And so you see me about 4 times with a hat on, top off, in shorts. And so, you see me leap over the wall at one time. So, yeah, 4 times. 4 times, I think you see me in that little, probably 30 seconds.
But there's one bit just before that, which is probably one of my favourite bits in the film. In fact, for a lot of people, I think this is. And it's when you were one of the SAS guards. Oh, so you have Bond running down the hill. You get your paint gun and shoot him. Obviously, he knocks you out the way and leaps onto the roof. And then you say an absolutely corker of a line. Can we hear that line today?
Yes, you can, yes. I wasn't going to do it. I'm the stunt coordinator. So John Glenn said, "You can play this part." I said, "No, I'm." He said, "Come on, you've got to play this part." So I got lumbered with the part. So Timothy comes down, hits me, and knocks me to one side, and jumps on the thing. now I'm coming for my close-up. So now I got all the stunt guys, all the crew standing around behind the camera going, and I've got to deliver this wonderful line. Here, hold on, you're dead.
So good. Absolutely love it.
So yeah, that was it was. I just about held it together because they were all behind the camera. When you do little parts like that, especially as a coordinator, the second unit director, they put you in, then the rest of the crew want to have a go at you.
That must have been good fun. Yeah. One of the other things I think that was quite interesting about Daylights is the final sort of the epic battle. So in the desert scene in Morocco, you've got tanks, you've got trucks, you've got planes, you've got horses, you've got machine guns, you've got however many number of sort of extras and stunt people working. What was that scene like? I mean, that must have been, to oversee all of that must have been incredible.
It was a tremendous, because we had first and second units. So I had 32 horses on one unit, 32 horses on the other unit, but they all, because we were blending them, they had to be in the right position with the right turbans on and the right. They had to look more or less the same, or you try to keep it. So I had 64 horses, Moroccans and English stunt guys and Spanish stunt guys. But then you've got to coordinate who's on what unit, who's doubling for what actor. So yes, it was a tremendous thing to put together logistically, and then to have the bulldozer come in and take the huts down. Yeah. And it was quite funny. I had Roy Allen, who was a great stunt guy, and Simon. And Simon said to me, I wanted two guys to come out in the nude, run out of the house as it's being pushed down, crushed down. It's supposed to be the bathhouse. I wanted one of them to run out naked. So Simon said to me, get Roy to do that. So I said, okay, that's fine, yeah. Roy, you're doing that with Simon. Simon, no. So I got the two of them running out of the building, and they left it to the last moment. You can see the actual building, the doorway distort as they come running out. But they do a great job. And Simon did some great explosions on there, apart from doubling for other people at the same time. Yeah,
that must have been a dangerous one, and maybe quite cold as well out there. I don't know what the temperature was like. But
it was, yeah. We went way out into the desert to get certain shots, and I remember going out there, and I thought, it's a lovely place in the middle of the desert. Or was as that. I thought I'd never come back here again. Mm. A year later, I was back in the same location on Spies Like Us. We're seeing the same people in a little village. Hello, nice to see you again.
That's great.
And you think you'd never go back again.
No. Obviously, a superb location for it.
Yes, it was. Yeah. And some great stuff. And I had some good horsemen doing horse falls and explosions. Mm. So quite funny, some of them.
Now, there was a stunt actually after the film had finished, which is probably more famous than any other stunt that's been in any of the Bond films. Now, this was when Princess Diana and Prince Charles came did they come to the set one day, didn't they?
Yes.
And there was a part where I think it was Q's bazooka, boombox, and it did a launch, and I think Prince Charles had to press the button. But there was also the part where Princess Diana had the glass bottle. Now, I've seen a picture, and I know that you were there with them. Did you have to give Princess Diana any advice on what to do, or was she just game for anything?
Well, how it happened is that they said, "Can you put on a show?" This was in it's supposed to be in Morocco, and it's where the villain has all his soldiers, and so we couldn't smash any of the cabinets or anything, but they wanted a fight in there. So I got a broke-away chair, and I said, we'd do a sword fight, just a bit of entertainment. So Simon Crane and myself, we did a sword fight, and he knocks me over a chair, and I pick up the chair and hit. And then the gag at the end of it was that we get to the door, and I beat him and chase him out the door, and he goes out the door. I turn around, and to Princess Diana and Charles and all the crew, the world press there, wow. And I take a bow, and as I come up, Simon puts his hand through the door, hits me over the head with a bottle, and I go, yeah, I do a funny collapse. End of the act. So then we're presented. You're not introduced, you're presented. So I get presented to Charles and Diana, and we're talking about the broken bottle. And he said, "Oh, it's very interesting. What's that made of?" I said, "Well, it's like a resin sugar glass. It used to be." So he said, "I said, do you want to hit me over the head with one?" He said, "Oh, yes, yes." So I pick out a bottle. I got a little box of them there. Picks up a bottle, and he hit me over the head, which was fine. He said, "Can you hit me over the head?" So now I'm looking into because some of the bottles come up quite hard, quite heavy. You have to make sure they're light enough. So now this is the future king. I'm going to hit over the head with a bottle. So I said, yes, fine. And she said, "Can I hit him?" So now I've got the princess to hit him over the head. And you have to hit. So I said to her, "Yes, you can." I said, "But you've got to hit him hard. You can't just tap it because you'll hurt his head and not break the bottle. But you got to hit him exactly, hold the neck and hit him." I showed her exactly where to do it. I said, "We do it like a film." I'll say, roll cameras and action, and then you hit him over the head. She said, "Yes, fine." So we're all ready. And I said, "Okay, turn over. And action." And she went, "Oh, no, I can't. I said, "Look, you can't stop now. You've got the world press here. You've got to hit him now." She said, "Oh, right." So I said, "Okay, roll cameras, stand by, and action." And she went, hit him over the head. And he turned around and he went, "It's got to last you 10 years. It didn't last that long. No. Yeah, so that was it. But wow. So yes, and when all that photograph went around the world, Princess crowns Prince. Mm. So yeah, that was it was quite an experience.
I'm thinking.
And then I was presented again at the premiere, which was lovely. But she was wonderful. She was. You were the only person in the room when she's talking to you. It was like, she really had a magnetism about her that you just were involved with her, and she was involved with you. Just anything she was asking about, what's your wife think about it? Had the kids, you going off doing dangerous stunts and things like that. She was really interested in the individual that she was talking to.
What an occasion to be there. Incredible. So following on from Living Daylights, then License to Kill. Now this one you got promoted to stunt coordinator. Fantastic. And for me, License to Kill, there are so mmany epic action scenes in it. It's sort of laced with it all the way through the film. I think there were a couple of times, obviously, you doubled for Tim. There's a few ones where you were at Hemingway House and did the leap over the barrier, over the railing, stuff like that. But I think some of the epic ones, there was a part where probably one of the best action scenes in the film, where you have this little sort of underwater robot with the drugs, and Bond is trying to escape underwater, does a barefoot water skiing, and basically goes onto the back of this seaplane and is holding onto the skids. Now, that looks absolutely amazing. It's an eye-opening stunt. What was that like to coordinate and also obviously to be a part of and to hang on this plane as it's taking off?
Yeah, the whole sequence was a difficult sequence to do purely because to get somebody water skiing, the story is that he's underwater and he's got a spear gun and he thinks it's a boat, and he fires the spear gun at it and gets pulled out of the water. And when he comes up on the top of the water, he sees that it's a seaplane about to take off. Now, the story was that he then comes up and he does barefoot water skiing behind the plane, and then catches up with the plane and jumps onto the float and takes off. we couldn't do it. The plane couldn't pull a person out of the water. It couldn't go fast enough, didn't have enough energy to pull it out of the water. So what we had to do was to put him on skis at first and then drop the skis. And then as soon as he went off, it wasn't working. If he didn't hit the 46 miles an hour, you can't barefoot water ski. So what we had to do was we built some little see-through plastic skis about this big to fit on his feet, so that we got him up as fast as we could, and then he came up on these plastic feet, and that's how we got him to catch up to the plane. Wow. But we still couldn't get out far enough or fast enough to come back in to hit the plane itself. So what I had to do was I had him go out as far as he could, and on a certain point, the plane would come into him, and then he could catch it up.
Yeah.
And that's how we did it. It was really a timing thing, but you wouldn't have thought that a plane couldn't pull a guy out of water.
No, not at all.
So we got the shot. So now we got the barefoot water skier hitting the side of the thing. So now I'm in Acapulco. I was flying backwards to Acapulco to Key West where we shot it on weekend. So I would go back to shoot the second unit on the weekend. So now I've got to get the seaplane with him on the side of it, taking off and going up. And we got this seaplane pilot who he said, "I'll show you what we do." And we went up, and I'm just, as a passenger, I'm being introduced to this guy who's going to take me up 200 feet to 300 feet, and with me hanging on the side. So, but he wants to show off. So now he's doing this and he's doing that. And I said, "Yeah, we don't need to do this, you know." But we're almost going upside down. It's like he's really showing me what he can do. So I said, "No, let's keep it sensible. I'll hit the side, and then you take off." So to make it realistic, when I'm on the side, then we'll take off, and I'll be hanging on. I didn't have any wires or anything, but the rope that we came from the spear gun, I thought, well, it should be on the back there because we're tracking with me hanging on the side from a boat, speedboat. I thought I'll just put the rope on it and a piece of wood on the end, not the actual spear gun, and off we went. So I'm hanging on the side and I'm hanging down thinking, you know, this is going to look good because I'm slipping off the side. My legs are dangling. I pull myself up, and as I pull myself up and lay flat, it felt like someone had hit me, my soles of my feet, with a baseball bat. I went whack. Oh, what was that? And when I look back, there's a lump of wood that it got stuck in the waves and then stretched the rope until it came up like elastic and hit me on the soles of my feet. If it had gone around the ailerons or gone around the anything important on the plane, we would have gone down. But it just hit me and just bounced off and was hanging down. But yes, and then we get up as high as we can, and he's doing this bit, and I'm sort of hanging, and then when it gets up to like 400 or 500 feet, the aerial unit take over, and they have parachutes on the back, and then they do the high stuff.
So, I mean, when you went up on that plane, you literally didn't have any hooks or wires. It was just you holding on to the plane itself.
Yeah.
Which is incredible. And then you got to the point where you've reached the height, the stunt is done, shot is in the can, but you still got to get back down.
Yes, yeah.
So how does that work?
No, I climbed inside.
No, you climbed inside. Okay,
yes,
okay,
yeah, I didn't want to hit the water with it hanging on the side.
Wow. So when he started doing the showing off bit, that wasn't in the script. He kind of did it.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, okay. That must have been.
Well, it's in the script because he does it, but I mean, this guy didn't have to do that. We were going to do that in the studio.
Oh, right. Okay.
Him looking down and do a bit of that, but he really did start to play with it.
Brilliant. I think the other amazing sort of action scene in this film. Well, briefly, actually, there's another part where you double team, where you abseil down outside Sanchez's office, which is really good. That's a nice little stunt. I like that one.
Mm-hmm.
But the tanker chase, now that for me, I think it's probably one of the best action pieces in the whole series. Again, the coordinating that whole tanker chase with all the sort of flames and the explosions, and you're moving vehicles. Obviously, there's a part where you have the plane and the car flying off the cliff as well. I mean, what was that like? And
again, it was, it's all storyboarded, and you know exactly what you're trying to achieve. And with John Glenn and John Richardson, you know what they're going to expect, and what we expect of them. And how safe we're going to be on it. But obviously we had Simon Crane doubling for Sanchez for most of it. I just did it occasionally. So to organise the tankers, to get them, Remy had spent about 2 or 3 months trying to get a tanker on 2 wheels. So that was a very difficult situation. Two-wheel driving is fairly easy on a truck.
Yeah.
If it's one solid vehicle. When you get articulated, that's when it becomes more difficult. When you're doing a truck, if you're doing a car, it's difficult if it's a short, long wheelbase and low, because you to get the balance between the lower part and the upper part is so fractionally. You're almost going on your wing to get the and you have to pump up the tires to 60 and make sure they don't flop on you. On a truck, you've got that much to play with, so you can do that with the steering wheel, and you've got the weight, and you can play with it as you're going along, and you can actually steer. But with a articulated truck, that's when the skill comes in. It takes a long time to perfect, and he had to cut off the part of the middle of the tank to make it slightly shorter, because it was getting out of you couldn't control too much. At one time, it wasn't Timothy, it was a French stunt guy, hit the wall and it just smashed up. It went through so many tankers. Yeah. So and then we just cut and it just carries on. But it did really smash a few of them up.
That's part of a Bond film,
yes,
I guess. Yeah. But finishing off that scene is the final sort of massive explosion, and obviously to set that off, Bond has the cigarette lighter from Felix and lights Sanchez up. Now, you were actually doubling Sanchez for that particular moment, and what a hair-raising stunt that was. Can you talk to us a bit about that one?
Yes, well, I was doubling for Sanchez because I had Simon doubling for Timothy on top of the tanker. On the back of it, when we're fighting and we're letting the petrol go down the road, the guy jumps out the tanker and we're both going down the hill and it's got to roll over. We shifted all the rocks from the lower part of the hill so that we could come down and see the truck turn over and land. The driver came off just slightly too early, and we went all through the rocks and smashed up completely. But I'm on the back, and so that when we do turn over and fall down, and Sanchez is covered in petrol, and we're ready for the fire job at the end. It was going to be a full burn. So I got an American stunt guy who came over a few weeks before and bought all his equipment. He was going to do it. The day before we're about to shoot it, he took me to one side and said, I've got another job. If I leave today, I can get 2 months' work. And, you know, as a stuntman, you want to make sure that, you know, you've all got work to do. And I said, yeah, that's fine. Leave your equipment. I'll do it myself. So that's how I got to be doing. I was a stunt coordinator. I didn't want to do it. Maybe he didn't want to do it. I don't know. But I was left with it. So Yes, I went through everything. When you're doing a fire job, you have to let everybody know exactly what you're doing. It's the most dangerous, one of the most dangerous stunts to do. I've heard of and seen people run on fire, and you can't catch them, and they can burn to death, because you panic if you're on fire. If you're not expecting it, I've seen a stunt special effects guy catch his jacket on fire. So, and he ran, which you don't do. You lay flat on the floor and put your arms out, and they know to come in and put you out. You may be burning, but you can't move. Otherwise, they can't get you. So I had them all standing by, and I showed them the rehearsal. Timothy would light me. I would turn around, go onto my knees, get up again, hit the side of the truck, and I had a row of rocks I could feel with my feet where the fire was going to come up on the pipe, and I'd fall over that, and then they'd bring the whole lot up. So I'm going on air for 3 minutes. I got 3 minutes of air on a little bottle that fits in there. So to do that, I've got to get in the costume. I got to get my fire suit on, and it's you put a very cold gel on underneath in your underwear, and then you put your 2 fire suits on, and then I put a mask on, a rubber mask, and you put your air in, and you're ready to go. But it's got 3 minutes, and I figure by the time I get dressed in the caravan and walk onto the set, it's going to be a minute and a half, because I've got to go on air, then they've got to put the mask on, put the wig on, and do the wardrobe, and get me on the set, and a minute and a half. I figured, 30 seconds for the camera to get ready, and they gel me up, and then I've got a minute or so. I reckon I'll have about 45 seconds to a minute to do the job. So I walk on the set, I'm on air, I'm ready to go. And it'd say, okay, because all I can see is 2 little spots out of the glass. I can see Timothy there. And they said, gel him up. So they gelled me up, and I'm ready to go. And they went, hold on. It's a problem with the camera. I went, and you got this little tube, and you're trying to suck this air up. And it's okay, we're ready to go. I'm going, So we're ready to go. They gel me up, and woof, it goes up in flames. So I know exactly what I'm doing. I pretend I'm trying to put myself out. I fall onto my knees, go over to the truck, feel the truck, go along the truck, feel my feet, and then fall over and hit the floor, which was fine. That was the idea. As soon as they lit me, I went, nothing. I thought, don't panic, just blow out, see if you can get anything. And it was like sucking up treacle. It was like oxygen. But I went through the whole thing, fell over, and they blew, the flames went up, and then I laid there, and I was starting to burn. I was out of air. And they got to me, they put the CO2, took my mask off, and I was breathing. And they pulled me to my feet and all saying, oh, great job, shaking hands. That's when I was burning. The heat transference was going through the costume. And I was, I was out. It was just the heat that was going through the costume. But yeah, it was a nice job to have done. But it was quite exciting to be inside that and just see nothing but flame.
So you're on the ground, you haven't got any air, you're obviously in flames, you can feel the heat, and they come over, they put out the fire, but yet obviously, like you're saying, the heat's still going through. How long does that last before it stops, or do you have to get out of costume, or?
You get the full heat, and it's when I was laying there and they stood me up, it's like I was like, ouch, it was like almost a scalding, because I was actually scalded under there, where I put my head back. I think the heat got under the mask somehow, and I think it was just condensation, the breath. Just turned to steam and it scorched under my chin. And where there were his gloves and they weren't very good, and where I was picking up the gel, it just burnt my thumb there, where I'd taken up too much on my hands. But yeah, no, that was it really. I was very lucky, and it was a good full burn to have done.
Oh, brilliant full burn. So was it the case that the air canister wasn't full, or it was, but it was just because the camera they had to reset and everything?
Reset, like and I just ran out. It was just like the last little bit,
and then tried to keep calm.
Yeah, and it is a mental thing. You don't panic. Just see how are you going to get out of this, and then you go through. I can do this. I can do this. And it's a matter of holding your breath and concentrating on getting the best shot. And I knew the boys were there. If I was in trouble, any time I'd laid flat, they'd have been in. So yeah, we completed the shot, and it was quite good.
Brilliant! It was better than quite good. It was fantastic. I think something that would be great for our listeners to hear about is the progression of a stuntman. So from first entering the stunt world, like their very first stunt job, all the way through to becoming a stunt coordinator. Can you tell us a bit about that and how and the sort of process of a stuntman's career, I guess?
Yeah, I suppose everyone's got an idea that stuntmen are just born stuntmen. It doesn't work that way. Some kids want to be stunts from the beginning. When I started, there wasn't really a stunt. There wasn't a stunt register. There wasn't any organisation. There was a few guys who got together and said they were stuntmen, and they were mainly characters. They were either ex-wrestlers, or PTX physical trainers. In the army, and came out and went into the films. So there was no set way of becoming a stuntman unless you knew somebody was a stuntman and they would put you in to do something if you were physically fit enough to do it. So when I started, most of the stunts had come out, were working in the crowd. We were extras, and you could be sitting in a dressing room, and an assistant would come in, or a stunt wrangler or a ranger would come in and say, "Who wants to fall down some concrete stairs?" And you say, "How much?" And you'd go out and you do it, and you'd get £10 or whatever instead of your £3. My first back pad was a piece of foam back carpet cut out to the shape of my back and a bit of string around it. And that was luxury. We had no elbows or knees or anything like that. So we were learning as we were going along. The stunt industry wasn't really organised, even though there was equity and there was the film extras. We would queue up as stunt people. We would queue up to get cash with the extras, and we said, "No, this is ridiculous. We should be equity members, and we should get paid by check and like actors. This is what we're going to. This is what we're aiming for, is that we will be recognised as a stunt register." So in 1968, we started our first book. That didn't really take off too well because it was a private thing. Then we went to equity and said, "Look, this is what we have to do. We need a register that will be accepted by producers and directors, and that we are qualified." So we went to Lloyd's and we got our own insurance, and so then we were taken more seriously, and we were able to go to producers and say, "Look, we are stuntmen. We're not crowd anymore. We're not doing crowd work. We have to give up our crowd tickets and become stuntmen," which a lot of the guys didn't want to do because they were getting cash before that, and now they've got to do their accountancies and all that. So a few of them dropped out, but a lot of them stayed on, and we started the stunt register, and we were recognised in 1973. So as you're going along, you're a stunt man or woman, and you have a stunt arranger who will tell you what to do. So you learnt by other people's mistakes, really. You'd see somebody do a fall and think, oh, he hurt himself there. I wouldn't, I'd make the boxes softer, or I'll do this or do that. And driving, you learn how to drive and be able to work to the camera. It's no good, we had one or two great high divers come in and they would do a fall and it would be perfect, but it wouldn't be a shot. You wouldn't get in shot and falling. You've got to use your skills for the camera. So that's what we started to do, is to started training people. We started the stunt register, and you have to be proficient at 6 out of a dozen categories, martial arts or abseiling, motorcycles, cars, horses, sub-aqua, anything, but you have to be proficient at those. So once we started getting recognized as athletes rather than just, extras, sort of just characters, we were being more and more accepted as a professional body. And we did that, and we trained people, and we would do charity days. So I'd organise a cherry picker and an airbag, and we would get all the youngsters doing falls into the airbag. In the afternoon, we'd do a fake. We'd do a sword fight, or we'd do cars and motorcycles. Just depends where we were, to put on a show for a charity. But those mornings were very important to teach people sword fighting or to high falls and things like that. So we were getting better and better, more organised. And as a stunt person, you get more and more experience. I did 2 years live stunt shows all over Scandinavia. That's 2 hours every night of the week, 6 nights a week. And you're doing car knockdowns. I used to get knocked down 4 times a night, over the bonnet one side, over the bonnet the other side, hit the windscreen and bounce off, and then run over the top of the car. So you get pretty used to that sort of thing, and getting kicked out of a car at 30 miles an hour. You lay flat, and you're like a pencil. You just, if you're doing it higher, then you bounce and it hurts. So yeah, you get to know how to do things, and you get more and more experience. This we were able to sort of use when you become a stunt coordinator. You then start saying to other guys, look, this you can do this, but this is how you do it, and you can teach them different ways. A lot of times you can't tell people how to take off on the right foot or left foot, because that's a natural instinct for themselves. So you have to say, what foot do you like to take off on? And then you can judge. You can't make them go off on your, because you do it on your left, it doesn't mean say they can. Yeah. So you have to be aware of people's abilities, and then use that ability for the film itself. As I say, if you're on top of a building and you get shot and you've got a gun in your hand, the weight of that gun is going to take you in one direction or another. So you've got to know what that's going to do to your body and how it's going to react in the air. And you don't want to fall on the gun, so you have to work out exactly where your feet are going to be pointing. If they're that way, you're going to fall that way. If you're that way, you're going to fall and hit your bed. So yeah, it's and how to get rid of a gun before you go, and you're in control of your body. If you don't have that experience, you can go off, and that weight will then take you somewhere you don't want to go. Yeah. So yeah, we learn and we teach the younger guys coming along. These days, they are total athletes. I wouldn't get into the business now. They are fantastic, spins and God knows what. But they train. We train, but we not to the standard that these guys, and we get them from all over the world now, from New Zealand, Australia, from Canada, from all over Europe, and they come and they work in this country. but they are top athletes and they are good stuntmen. Now what we have to do is to use, you see somebody's got a certain talent, how can you use that in your film? And jerk backs and spinning and whatever. Star Wars and Bonds and Bourne Identity, are becoming more real. They don't want cartoon characters flying all over the place. It's guys on wires being jerked back and thrown all over and jumping from one building to another. When I started on Superman, I used to double for Superman, and we couldn't get rid of the wires. The wires would show up, and if they showed up, they have to blow up each frame and paint them out. So we went down to 18 gauge piano wire, which was a cord off a piano, and then you have a little, like a coat hanger up above your head and maybe 16 feet of wire coming down onto a little harness, and then you fly and you spin and you trust the wires. But it was just one thin wire. So on the burglar sequence on Superman 1, I'm doubling for Superman. I'm flying. We got the side of the building laid out on the studio floor, and the guy's walking on his hands and knees. Yeah, he's going up with the suckers, and so they've got a camera there. And at the end of the studio, they've got the big screen with the projecting the streets of New York down there. So when you look, it looks like he's climbing up, and you're going to fly down. In fact, you're flying along. So I'm doubling for Superman. I'm flying along and doing. For some reason, the wires broke, and I fell on my head 16 feet, about 14 feet. But I got my hands down, and I had damaged my wrist. I can't get them back any further than that, even today. But I must have got my hands down, and I broke my cheekbone and damaged my hip. And I was out. But I was okay, and I went off and do another movie before I came back onto Superman again. But the wires do break. Then we realised that it's no good of them just one wire. So we had like a Bowden cable, about 3 or 4 wires together, and that we felt more safe on. But these days you can have a cable as thick as your thumb and 4 or 5 on you, and you can be doing what you like. They just take them out. Yeah. We tried everything to get rid of wires. Yes, that's another story. I'll tell you another time. But yeah, we did all sorts of tricks to try to get rid of wires.
So there is some really good use for CG in this day.
Yes.
Obviously, there are certain things that maybe it's not so good for, but stuff like that, obviously, it's a godsend compared to having the wires back in the day. Yeah,
you can jump from one building to another with a cable on. We had to do it for real. There was no, you'd run along the top of the rooftop and then you jumped. And it was... parquet before, free running before it was invented. Yeah. But that's what we used to have to do.
Well, one of the questions I was going to ask, which I'll obviously ask now, relating to injuries, obviously you mentioned there the Superman one. Stunt work is obviously a dangerous profession. Were there any other injuries? And have you ever had like a serious injury which made you consider your career path and perhaps think of something else, or?
Not really. As I say, on Superman, you get knocks and bruises. Getting knocked down by a car. Every night of the week, you get knocked around a bit. But you perfect the way you're going to do it, and most things can be done with practice or with the use of a camera. You can get away with murder. On Return of the Jedi, I was playing the character in the rubber mask and everything and I was a skiff pilot, Badine, the skiff pilot, and I have to fall into the Sarlacc pit after a fight with Billy D. Williams. But the cable broke. He was supposed to be on the cable, his stunt double, and I hang on to him and give it a shake and then fall down the Sarlacc pit and roll into the Sarlacc pit about 20 feet. So we do it one, it works okay, and then we do it again, and the wire broke on his on his harness, and it would a lot of times things go into slow motion when you're having an accident or your adrenaline's pumping. And the explosion went off, and I had my hand holds, and I felt his body jerk, and I saw him reach up to grab the cable because it had come off his harness, and there was a little bit hanging on metal on the end of the cable, and it just cut through his hand, and I saw the blood go like that, all in slow motion, and I thought, oh damn, we're in trouble here. So now instead of me just falling down 12 feet and rolling into the Sarlacc pit, we were going out to 20 feet, and he was on top of me. So in the air, I thought, this ain't right. And I had my right foot down, and on the side of the Sarlacc pit, they'd put 4-inch foam and covered it in sand. And the foam just grabbed my foot, and his weight on top of me just broke my leg. And I was tumbling into the Sarlacc pit, and I thought, I've broken my leg. And I thought, if I put my toes up and my toes are pointing upwards, it's only one bone. If it's facing the other way, that's 2. That's bad. So just as I was going into the Sarlacc pit, I threw him off and threw my leg up, and my toes were pointing up. I thought, oh, that's good. I really did. It was like, yeah.
So that's all of that in the space of a fraction of a second. Yeah. It's amazing how quickly the mind can work when you need it to, sort of thing.
Absolutely. And I was happy that was only one bone.
Yeah. And then... And then the sort of recovery time from that before you get back in the game.
Well, I went Harrison. I was out in Yuma, Arizona, and Harrison Ford, when he was off, I was on crutches. It'd take, because I had to wait and check it all out. It'd take me down to town. He would drive, and we'd drive into Yuma, Arizona, and go into shops. If any of the crew wanted stuff to pick up, we'd pick it up. And the girls would say, to Harrison, oh, you're Harrison Ford, aren't you? And he'd go, no, I'm his stunt double. That's Harrison over there. And there's me on crutches. Cut 40 years later, I'm doing the Force Awakens at Pinewood, and he's there. He's on the set. I'm doing night work, night shoot. He's on the day. So I'm about to go into the studio to see him. And when they come out and they said, no, it's no work tonight, what's the problem? Harrison's broke his leg. So I couldn't be there for him when he was there for me when I broke my leg.
That's a shame.
So yeah, no, I mean, accidents do happen, and I've been very lucky. I try to have hindsight, which I do as a stunt coordinator or second unit director, is that you work out exactly what you want done and how you want it done and how safe, all the safety bits, and you go, yeah, now what if? What if I got that wrong, and should we bring the camera crew back a little bit further? Should we, if that happened, what would happen if the car got stuck there and it slid this way? So I go through everything, the possibilities that could go wrong. And I try to have a hindsight. You try to cover every possible angle of that could go wrong. So in doing that, you eliminate a lot of the risks. Yeah, hopefully.
So it's practice, perseverance, and risk assessment and prep and risk assessment, isn't it? That's obviously hugely amount. So obviously you took quite an extended break after License to Kill in terms of the Bond world. Obviously you're working on a lot of other films, but you came back in 2012 for Skyfall. Now, was there any particular reason for the break from Bond, and how did it feel sort of coming back to Bond after all that time?
No, you expect that new directors, new setups, and they want their own people in or whatever, and you accept that. But I was busy on other movies as well, so I wasn't complaining. So it was lovely when I did get a call from Barbara and the company to come back and do a little bit. So it was lovely to see everybody on the set again, and so it was good.
So you mentioned there about Star Wars, obviously Indiana Jones, James Bond, Superman, Aliens. You've done so many of the great franchises. Is there any one stunt, perhaps, out of all those, which really stands out for you? Maybe the one that you're most proud of, or the one that you look back and you think, yeah, that's a good one. That one.
I think we mentioned that the ducking under the bridge was the most dangerous, and the one you think I was lucky to get away with that. So that stands out in your mind as one that you got away with. You're proud of achieving stuff for the films. Like Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, I came up with the idea that they get on a rope with a counterbalance, and Marion and Robin come down. She was supposed to climb down the ladder, which was very awkward. When does the man go down the ladder? They're 30 feet up in the trees in the treasure house. How do you get a lady down with? So I came up with the idea of a counterbalance, and we had a very romantic spin down while they're very close together. So you're contributing to that part of the movie by coming up with an idea. If you're doing that, you feel happy that you're contributing. In terms of stunts, you come up with ideas. Like on Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, we had to get Azim and Robin over a wall, and we couldn't do it on the wires. The wall was too close; it was 40 feet high, and the director said, "Paul, it's yours. Second unit, you shoot it." And I couldn't get them on crane on wires trying to lift them up. So what I did, I always thought simple is best. I stood them on the wall, got them jumping backwards, and then reversed the film. So they went over the wall. So they took off. We shot that in December in England at Shepperton Studios, and they took off on the ballista in December in England, landed in Carcassonne in February.
That's incredible.
So so cut together. But you're happy when you can contribute to the movie itself.
And there's a little bit of magic to that as well, isn't there? When you can do something.
When you work out, ways of doing things, that look spectacular, look dangerous, but they're safe enough, and you can get yourself to do it or other people to do it. I get more worried about asking other people to do it as a second unit director or coordinator than doing it myself.
Yeah. So. You did mention there was one stunt where you were doing a bit of a high fall into an ambulance, and but the vehicle that turned up wasn't quite what you were expecting. Can you tell us a little bit about that one?
Yes, I was doing a film, I think it was called The Assassin. It was in Copenhagen. And I'd already done knockdown on the motorway for this actor, and he's taken off to a hospital and he's put in bandages, and he's taken up on the 6th or 7th floor or whatever. And he's supposed to then get thrown out of the over the balcony and land into an ambulance, which is outside the hospital, which is fine. So they said, "Can you fall into the top of an ambulance?" And I thought, yes, an English ambulance is quite wide, as long as I'm not too high, I won't do the 60. I'll come down a bit, and yes, I'll go into that. So I'm all ready for it, and they bandage me up, and I'm standing on the balcony waiting. It's the ambulance is supposed to be there at 10:30 in the morning. It's not there. By 11, this is ridiculous. Where is the ambulance? And it turns up, and it's a Mercedes car, a long wheelbase that is turned into an ambulance. They took the top off and put Formica like a thing over the top, and put in little boxes inside. Took the seats out and put little boxes inside and a mattress.
Little mattress, yeah.
And that was it. And what do? You're standing there. The cameras are all set up. The ambulance had arrived. The fact that it's not the ambulance you wanted is that small. So I figured I could possibly do it, but 3 inches either way. And I would either smash my head on one end or the other. It was 6'3" long and I think it was 2 foot wide.
And you're quite a tall bloke.
Yes,
yourself,
So yes, it was very tight.
Yeah.
Again, that was a wonderful thing to have done.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to do it again,
No.
but it was nice to have done.
Fantastic. I just like to say you're still kind of currently in the game. Like we mentioned, obviously Star Wars. You've done a couple of the recent Star Wars. You worked on The Mummy, the Tom Cruise vehicle recently, The Mummy. We saw you as I mentioned as Blofeld chauffeur, which is great, Inspector. That was really cool that you were part of that. Will we see you in Bond 25?
Who knows? Who knows? If Barbara remembers me, she might do. But yes, it's nice when they do call you, and you feel. And I was introduced to Wolf as part of the franchise, so it was nice to be involved with it again. And if Gary, who's probably the coordinator, if he calls me up, then yes, I'll go along. And it's just lovely to be part of it again. I don't want all the responsibility that goes with those movies at this time. But yeah, it's just nice to go along and see everybody and say hello.
Well, we'll keep our fingers crossed that you are in the next one. Do you have any sort of opinions on how you'd like to see the franchise go? Obviously, the Daniel Craigs have been so successful and everything like that.
Yeah. I wish they would just put a bit more fantasy into it, not in terms of storylines, but the fact of not make it quite as, they're competing with the Bourne Identities, which is very violent, and we want a good story, but we'd like a little more fun as well.
I completely agree.
Just lighten it up a little, and I think everyone would enjoy it more.
That's it. I think we got a little bit of that, Inspector, and it'll be interesting to see how they go. If Daniel, obviously, as we think, is doing final one.
Yes. Yeah.
Let's just hope it's a belter. Let's hope so. So where can our listeners find out a bit more about you? Do you have a website or Facebook page or anything like that?
Mainly a website, which is paulwestonstunts.com. They can reach me on there if they want to leave a message, and I'll get back to them. Yes, but that's about it, really.
And you've got sort of videos and stills from all your stuff?
Yes, all the stuff's on there. I haven't updated it for some time, but I certainly will. And hopefully I'll be able to be in communication with your listeners.
Excellent, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure, Paul, having you on the show. It's been so entertaining, the stories that you've told.
Oh, good.
And I think our listeners are going to absolutely love it. So thank you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Take care. Thanks, Paul.
Cheers.
Mate, that is what we call a dog's bollocks of an interview. That was brilliant, man. I thoroughly enjoyed listening to that. And I tell you what, one thing that strikes me with that is that there are things, I remember watching that Princess Diana and Prince Charles thing back in the day on TV when it happened. I remember seeing the footage. I was very young. I would have been 5. But I do have vague memories of that happening. And I remember seeing the whole smashing of the bottle. And to think that was actually Paul. There he is, bang, smashing him on his head. There he is. All these years later, when you look back on it, it's been something that's been, something that we'd remember all these years. And then you meet the guy that was involved in like an iconic moment to do that. Because that always gets brought up, doesn't it, that moment? Because it's like obviously when Diana smashed Prince Charles over the head with that bottle, whenever it's like thinking back to Diana or whatever, that is always one of those key moments that they bring up. And he was right there at the time, which is pretty crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. It must have been pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And I mean, he was obviously involved in. He did that little bit of stunt work as well. They had recreated like a sword fight beforehand, and the fact that Prince Charles smashed the bottle over his head. That's, I mean, that doesn't happen every day, does it?
It's pretty cool as well. I mean, it's like going back to Jay with the last interview being Bond in that skydiving sequence, and then you've got Paul being Sanchez with the flame out moment towards the end, and it's kind of like, man, those are things that are just, it sounds silly to say it, but they're immortalized in Bond films and they're going to be there forever. And even though obviously he's doubling for somebody else and you're not sort of supposed to know that it's Paul Weston or Jay in that kind of sequence, but it actually is. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, for geeks like us, when we watch those films again, it's going to be like, let me see if I can spot Paul where he is, like which shots would have been in. Do you know what I mean? And things like that. And that's pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. It's like I said to Jay, when you watch the film, did you go, that's me up there, that's me? And he was like, obviously, yeah. And with Paul, obviously, when you know what he's in, you'll be able to recognise him quite a lot in certain things.
Yeah.
Obviously, in the pre-titles for Living Daylights, he played about 5 or 6 different sort of background extras that had to jump out of the way of the van and various other bits and pieces.
Now, listen, before you go any further, I have to commend you, because I remember when just before you were going to go and do this interview, I said, listen, I've got one request and one request only. You've got to make him say the quote. And he did. And I'm very happy with that, Chris. I'm very pleased with it.
And he nailed it as well, like completely. And he knew exactly what I was talking about when I sort of said, you know the line, don't you? And he was like, yeah. Well, but the... Yeah, go on.
I was going to say, because obviously we met him at Bond Stars last year, and I remember saying to him, I was like, you were responsible for one of my favourite lines in the whole series of Bond. He's like, really? Which one? And of course, when I told him, he was like, oh yeah, everybody says that.
Yeah. But he was funny as well, because he was sort of saying, obviously while he was doing it, all of the stunt crew and most of the other crew were behind the cameras, like doing this, making faces, trying to make him like muck up his line and everything like that. But yeah, I think he obviously delivered it well.
Yeah.
And cracking. And the whole Sanchez thing, man. So, okay, so like he's saying, you're in a full sort of bodysuit thing. You've got all this flame-proof gel all over you. You've got this tiny air canister with like 3 minutes worth of air.
Yeah.
Which obviously you have to start breathing before you put the mask on over the top. So you get this face mask, and that has to be covered in gel.
Yeah.
So you're already breathing. You come out onto location, and some guy's like, oh no, sorry, the camera's not quite right, or whatever it is. And you're like, that is so bad, because obviously the air's going down, Okay, so he gets into position. The guy's like, okay, he gets sort of satellite. Obviously, you can feel the heat is super hot inside. You know, you're like, this is a dangerous thing, and then the air's gone, and you're like, because it wasn't fully set up properly, the air's gone. You're covered in flames. Okay, you've got a couple of options. He said sometimes people get so scared they literally run. And obviously, like you heard, that's the worst thing you can do, because people can't chase you with extinguishers to try and get you out.
Yeah.
So you have to put yourself on the floor and roll around, or just put yourself on the floor and basically just wait.
Yeah.
And obviously people know that means you need to be put out. And he could have done that. He could have done that straight away. He was out of air. They'd have to set everything up again, but that's what he could have done. But he was like, no, I know that I can hold my breath for a certain amount of time. And he said he had to backward step until he felt a certain pole beneath his feet. And that's where he knew where the fire was.
Right.
So obviously he stepped on this pole. That's when he knew where he had to go down. Then they have obviously the big flames come up. And then obviously he still has to wait for someone to come in and extinguish him. Now that's a brave man to do that.
That takes quite a considerable pair of balls, doesn't it, to go through something like that? And that's why I can never be a stuntman, Chris, because I would be like, nah, thanks, mate. I'll give that one a miss pretty much every time. Yeah. So good on him for that, man. That is quite impressive. All to serve us.
And what
geeks,
a legend as well. Yeah, exactly. And a really, really nice guy, and an absolute legend as well. If you look at just all the stunts that he's been involved in throughout Bond history, and obviously all the other amazing sort of films that we mentioned as well.
Yeah.
Incredible. And what a bloke.
What a geese. Good stuff. Well, thank you for Paul and to Jay as well for giving us their time, because that's cool. And again, I feel like we could trot out as many stunt episodes as we possibly could, because it's always going to be a fascinating story. And typically, it's the sort of stories that you don't really hear about all that often. You watch the DVD extras and stuff, and of course, they'll talk about the barrel roll stunt and things like that, but it's usually, interviewing the kind of, the broader strokes of things, isn't it, on those DVD extras? So being able to go deep with Paul on something like this is pretty cool. So I feel like we'll definitely trot out some more stunt episodes for sure.
I also think that next time you're in the UK, or at least one time that you're in the UK, we should visit Body Flight again.
Yeah, I'm down.
And we'll get because you can do 2 at a time. So we'll get you and me, both of us, in the tunnel, man.
Nice.
Like doing our. I tell you what, you could be Jaws and I'll be Bond. I'll just be hanging there, and you could sort of swoop down and try and bite my ankle.
See, I'm happy to do things like that within the realms of safety. That's my rule. It's like I feel like that's a relatively controlled environment. Jumping out of a plane or something like that that's where I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I mean, of course that's controlled and pretty safe, but at the same time, that seems scarier to me. I don't know. I don't have as big a pair of balls as Paul obviously does, or indeed you. but yeah, I'm definitely up for a go at body fight for sure.
All right, wicked. Cool. We'll do that. And also, we just wanted to say huge thanks, obviously, to Dan Gale. That interview, it came out so well. Obviously, the setup was brilliant, edited really, sort of, really, really professionally. And that man, he deserves a huge mention. So thanks, Dan.
Yeah, man, what a good lad. I know from experience when I've been editing interview footage and stuff, when there's a camera there and it is so time consuming. It is ridiculous and it takes ages. So Dan Gale, I salute you because you've taken that out of my hands, so I don't have to do it. That's really nice of you. Thanks, man. Lovely stuff. So moving on then, Chris, I think it's time we revisit our listener trivia question of the day, don't you?
Yeah, that's it, yeah. And should we play it again just to remind the listeners?
Let's do it.
During the movie Goldfinger, in the junkyard scene, we see a continuity error. Can you guys point out what that continuity error is? Hope you get that one. Thanks. Bye.
All right then. So, what do you reckon? Is there anything that stirred in your memory banks? Because I can't think of anything continuity-wise for that particular scene of Goldfinger. I think this might be something that's actually new to me, Chris. I'm excited.
I think it probably is to me. The only thing that I've previously thought that was a bit strange was, basically when the car gets crushed, and obviously it's full of gold in the back as well. When that gets put on the pickup truck, I always wondered why the sort of suspension didn't bottom out on the pickup truck, because if you think how heavy the other car would have been with the gold. But that's the only thing that I remember thinking when I was like, how it hardly goes down on the pickup truck. I was like, is that how does that work? But no, there's not really
eyes you've got.
Yeah. Oh, wait till you get to my teeth. It's not really a continuity error though. So no, I'm not quite sure what it is really.
Yeah. Well, I must admit I have got no idea. So should we turn it over to Shamir and find out what the dealio is?
Yeah, let's do it.
Hey, Tom and Chris, this is Shamir Ravji calling from Station C, Canada, with the answer to the trivia question that I had sent in earlier. Well, the continuity error ended up being that the 64 Lincoln that was used during the chase was switched with a 63 Lincoln that ended up being crushed in the machine. You can also notice that the hubcaps were also quite different. Hope you guys ended up getting that one, and keep up the good work. Thanks. Bye.
Well, there we go. I think we've both learned something new today, Chris. Did that ring any bells for you, or is that brand new news for you?
No, that's definitely brand new news for me. I didn't recognise the difference or the hubcaps really. So yeah, that's a really good little nugget there, Shamir. Thanks for that one.
Good work, Shamir. I feel like we've got our work cut out for us now, because obviously what we have to do is when we watch License to Kill, we've got to look out for Paul when he gets set on fire. When we watch Quantum again, we've got to look out for Jay when he's doing his skydiving bit. And obviously when we watch Goldfinger now, we've got to keep our eyes peeled during that sequence there with the Crusher and see if we can spot the hubcaps.
There we go. It just means we're going to have to watch more Bond, Tom. Oh, shucks.
Indeed, man. And that's always good. Good stuff. So, Chris, I know you're going to be very excited about this next part, because I feel like you know what it's time for, don't you?
Go on, you tell me.
It's time for the Guess the Quote round.
Bond, James Bond.
Indeed, there it is. Good stuff. Now, if I remember correctly, it was your quote last time, wasn't it?
It was indeed, and I shall replay that for the listeners and for your good self right now.
Give it to me.
Mamma mia c'è successo, odio tutto distrutto.
That's beautiful. That is beautiful.
Thanks, man.
Do you know what? I was certain I knew it last time, and I'm having a wobble, but I'm just going to jump out. Is it when Jaws' car smashes into the roof and the old man is stood there?
Exactly. Yes, man. Right on point. Yeah, that's it. Beautiful. I obviously can nail the Italian language perfectly, clearly.
This is it, man. It's the performance of the quote is the important thing. So, if the quicker the guesser gets it is obviously a reflection of the quality of the quote itself. So well done, man. You did well there.
Yeah, I did have my hands on my head at the time, but obviously you didn't see that. But
yeah, absolutely, good stuff. Righty-ho then, Chris. I've got a quote for you this time. Are you ready for it?
I certainly am. Fire it away.
All right, here we go. I've got to get myself into the mode for this one. Okay, here we go. How do you do? I'm so pleased to meet you.
I love it when you do that accent. It always seems to come up, and it's normally either a female or a posh sort of person. Can you do it for us again, please?
Yeah, of course. I will give you performance number 2.
Okay.
How do you do? I'm so pleased to meet you.
Oh, that's good. That's good, Tom.
Now, does that ring any bells? Do you think, I know who that is, or anything?
It doesn't jump out straight away, but I know that with thought, I think I'll get it. Because the line I've heard before, I've just got to program my brain to pick it out.
Right.
Yeah, but good one. Oh, I like that. That's a really nice one.
Thanks, man. Good stuff. Oh, very nice. So we got we had a listener quote last time, didn't we, from Matthew Harkin, I believe it was.
We did indeed. Now, this one was a really, really cool one. Should we play that again?
Let's do it. Mate, I'm stumped on that. I am absolutely stamped. I've got no clue. Have you got any wobbles on that? Any wombles? I don't even know where these words are coming from today.
No, I think, you know what? I think I might do. I don't know the bit at the end. The first 2 bits, because initially I thought Tiffany K's Diamonds Are Forever, but she only does one E, sort of E. Whereas this time there's 2.
That's where mine went to as well.
Yeah, but I think I know where it might be, but I don't know the bit in the quote that goes after the 2 E's. I don't know what that is. But the only other thing that I could think of is possibly from License to Kill when Felix and Della go back inside and someone sort of hits Felix over the head and someone grabs Della and she kind of goes ee, or something like that. But I don't know what that was. But yeah, that's the only other thing that came to mind. But I don't know what the other bit is with the other bit of noise.
All right, cool. Yeah. So should we turn it over to Matthew then and find out what's going on?
Yeah, definitely.
Hi guys, I hope I stumped you with that. I probably haven't though. But the quote is Della, just before she's murdered in License to Kill. Keep up the good work, guys.
Well, mate, looks like your little suspicion there turned out to be quite correct. I feel where I sort of lost it a little bit there is I feel like he's made a sad and brutal moment, which is the murder of Della, into something that sounds quite comical. Do you know what I mean? I was thinking it was along the lines of, like a little rat in Diamonds Are Forever or something when, Bond's down the tunnel or something like that. Yeah. But, interesting.
Mate, I tell you what, that is a future quote right there. The rat from Diamonds Are Forever. It's got to be done.
There he is.
It's got to be done.
But cool. Good work, Matthew. Obviously, the performance was good enough because you got it there, Chris. You nailed it. So, congratulations to you,
Nicely
man.
won. Cheers,
So,
Matthew.
Nice to hear from you, Matthew. Good stuff. Next up, we have a new listener quote, don't we, for this week?
We do, and it's from, I think it's a first-time quoter, shall we say, Mr. Pablo Schaffner. So should we have a listen to Pablo's quote?
Let's do it.
Hi guys, the name's Schaffner, Pablo Schaffner. I'm the guy that did the Zoran skateboards on your Facebook page. I hope you like those. Here is my listener quote. Libero. Libero.
All right, good one. Nice one to hear from you, Pablo. Good stuff. Now, it's tricky, that one, isn't it? I'm not sure anything comes to mind particularly for me. What about you? What are you thinking?
There's something there, definitely. There's definitely something there, but I can't quite pinpoint it at the moment. We'll have to have another listen, obviously, next time and see if it rings any bells.
Indeed, good stuff. Nice work, Mr. Schaffner, Pablo Schaffner. Good work. We'll obviously.
That's quite a good name, isn't it? I like that name, Pablo Schaffner. There's something about it. I think that's definitely like a filmic type name, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? Absolutely good stuff. Yeah. All right, we'll obviously find out the answer to that one next time. But now, Chris, I'm sure you're very excited, as am I, because it is time for...
Who wrote the score for Live and Let Die? Who played Helga Brandt? How did she die? Who wants to stockpile the water in Bolivia? It's Tommy Trivia.
All right, it's time for Tommy Trivia. This is where Chris pulls out some cards from the Trivial Pursuit 007 edition deck and quizzes me upon them. So, Chris, what have you got for me this time, buddy?
Okay, so I'm going to let you choose which category you want to go first. So we've got either casting characters, the films, vehicles, gadgets and weapons, locations, or crew and behind the scenes. What would you like to do first?
Gadgets and weapons, please.
Gadgets and weapons. Okay. So question 1, Mr. Tom Sears, how many bullets are in the golden gun?
1.
Yes, it would be 1. Absolutely.
But that
brilliant.
would depend on whether you judge that based on the original plan, which was that Scaramanga would have multiple bullets, but they didn't actually go for that in the final cut. So which way are we going there, Chris? What do you think?
Well, I think the extra bullet would have been in his belt and not in the gun itself. So the gun itself can only hold 1 bullet in the chamber. But an alternative look at it could be, well, are you talking about Scaramanga's golden gun? Or perhaps are you talking about Goldfinger's golden gun, which obviously... Was that a Colt or something like that, which would have had more than 1 bullet? So it doesn't actually specify. Well, in fact, it does, because it tells me the man with a golden gun. But even if it didn't...
Goldfinger was still technically a man who had a golden gun, so I feel like you need to be a little bit more clear with their questions.
I mean, come on, Trivial Pursuit. What's going on here? This is crazy. But I will still give you the point, because you were correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so next up, question 2, we have locations. Now, where do Bond and Anya first meet?
Where do Bond and Anya first meet?
Yes.
Is that at the Majaba Club?
Ooh, no. It is not at the
Club.
Majaba Club. They had already seen each other before then. That's the first time when they sort of let each other know that they know, she knows who Bond is and he knows who she is, but they meet before that. Any other idea?
Let me just mentally scan through the whole movie a second. Hold on.
Okay.
Hold on a minute. No, that's before that. Is that after? When do they go on the submarine?
No, that's much later. No, that's much later. Yeah.
Do you know what I love about that scene is when they're being like airlifted down onto the submarine and like Bond's just staring at her and she hates every second of it. I love Roger's face in that. That's one of my favourites.
He is great. He's great.
Oh damn! Where do they meet? I know I'm going to hate myself for not getting this, but my mind is blanking out on me and I'm struggling to remember where they meet.
No problem. Okay, so they actually meet for the very first time at the Pyramids of Gizeh. So basically when Bond, he goes to see Fakesh and Triple X is speaking to Fakesh on the row or two in front of him. And then after he finds Fakesh has been killed by Jaws, he comes out. And do you remember Anya turns up with Ivan and Boris and they have a little fight and he goes, I hope you enjoyed the show. And that's the first time that he meets her.
Is that so? Do you know what? I wouldn't have got that. I feel like I thought they'd met sooner than that, but that's interesting. All right, cool. I've learned something today. Good stuff.
Nice one. Okay, so on to question 3. This is crew and behind the scenes. Now, this one might be tricky. Who, Mr. Tom says, who directed GoldenEye?
Who directed GoldenEye? My boy, Mr. Martin Campbell.
Yes. And would you like to see him back for Bond 25?
Absolutely. I'd like to see him back for Bond 26 and 27 and 28 as well.
Okay. Nice one. It is, of course, Mr. Martin Campbell. So that's great. 2 out of 3 so far. On to question 4, which is cast and characters. Can you please tell me, who does Benicio del Toro play? So what is the name of the character that played by Benicio del Toro?
That would be Dario.
It would indeed. Fantastic stuff. Excellent. Okay, on to question 5, which is the films. Where is Sir Godfrey Tibbett killed? That is
in a car wash.
In a car wash, indeed.
Just on to get the car washed.
In the car wash.
And I have never passed a car wash since watching A View to a Kill for the first time and not thought about that scene. It's a powerful one.
Well, I was lucky enough to actually visit the car wash when we did the old Chateau Hand earlier this year. We didn't have a Rolls Royce. In fact, we didn't have a car. We had a massive coach, so we couldn't go through.
Yeah.
But we did have enough time to walk through and strangle each other. So that was great fun.
Brilliant. Nice. Good
okay. So far you have 4 out of 5. This is the final question, which is on vehicles. Are you ready, Tom?
I am ready.
In which country does Bird 1 land?
In which country does Bird 1 land?
Mm-hmm.
Are we talking Dr. No or You Only Live Twice?
What would Bird 1 be in Dr. No?
I take it we're talking You Only Live Twice then.
yeah. Bird 1's the rocket, basically, Blofeld's rocket.
Where's it land? In Blofeld's volcano lair? Is the question the country?
Yes, yeah.
Japan.
Yes, excellent.
Lovely.
Japan indeed. 5 out of 6, 80%. 5/6 rather. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. That is superb.
Good stuff.
There we go, man. That's cracking. So,
do you know what I think the Trivial Pursuit people made a mistake with there? I feel like if you're going to have 6 questions on a Trivial Pursuit card, you should have pushed it to one more so you could have 007 questions for each card. Do you know what I'm saying?
I reckon you're probably right.
I feel like they missed a trick there.
Right. I think you're right. What is that, 83% or something? I think you got, which is great. But you're right, and also specifics. The man with the golden gun. Come on.
Yeah, I feel like I earned an extra point for that.
I tell you what, I'll give you a half mark. So you ended up getting 5.5 out of 6. Man, that is. I love the spirit
epic of the JBR quizzes. I love the fact that half marks are liberally poured out. It's good. It makes me feel better about myself.
It's got to be done. It's got to be done.
All right, then, Chris. That's Tommy Trivia done for this week. But next up, it is time for. It's the music cue. That's right. It's time for Guess the Music Cue. Now, this is where Chris furnishes us with a tiny little snippet of Bond score, and we have to guess what film it's from and what scene it's from. Now, obviously, we had a music cue from last time, Chris, so should we have a little replay of that one?
Yes. Now, I remember this is one you were pretty confident on, particularly the film. So let's play that again and see what the listeners think.
Yeah. Righty-ho then. I instantly know that is from The Living Daylights.
Excellent. Correct. Any idea of scene?
I think that's got to be from the climax of the film in Afghanistan.
It's close. It is in Afghanistan, but I wouldn't say it's the climax of the film. It might. It's a little bit earlier than that, but it is in Afghanistan. In fact, the word Afghanistan is mentioned.
Then it's got to be the little prison fight.
Yay! It's the start of the jailbreak fight. Excellent. Yeah, nice one.
Yeah. Kara, we're in the middle of a Russian airbase in the middle of Afghanistan. Well, at least we're together. Yeah, good old Kara, bless her
Mate, dude, can you do that? At least we're together again.
At least we're together.
That's so good. That is like Miriam Dabo is in the room. Amazing.
There you go.
That's super.
What can I tell you? Very nice. Good stuff, man. I'm proud of myself for that. Got it in 2. So what have you got for us this time?
Now, I've actually got a music cue which coincidentally relates to one of the quiz questions we've had quite recently. I'm not going to say any more. I'm going to play it now and see what you think.
Okay. Very nice. I like that. That's another one where I know the film immediately.
Yeah.
Whether I know the scene, I've got a good idea of the scene, I think.
Right. You're sounding confident, man. I like it.
Yeah, I'm quietly confident on that one. Good stuff. Excellent work.
Sweet.
All right, then, Chris. So it's time for our penultimate game of the day, Chris, and it is called What's the Next Line? He went for a one-shot kill today. He's gone for a Scaramanga.
I was gone for a Scaramanga. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, very nice. Good stuff. Now, what's the next line for any new initiates is kind of like the guess the quote round, but the answer has to be the following line from the film. So if the question was, do you expect me to talk? The answer would be no, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. Things like that. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, what we're shooting for this time is if you can possibly just bang it out in one go without the repetition, the second repeat, then you get a bonus mark, right?
Okay.
So that's what we're always shooting for. And what's the next line? It's not always easy to do that.
No.
But here we go. Now, I've got one for you today, I nearly started the quote there. I nearly called you James because that's the beginning of my quote.
Oh, okay. That's a hint.
Well, you know who it's not. That's for sure saying it. Right, so I'm going to give you one, and I think you'll get it. I do think you might need a second performance. I'm not sure if you'll get it first time through, but if you can get it first time through, I'll be very impressed. Right?
Right. Okay. Sounds good.
So here we go. Are you ready?
I'm nervously ready. Yes.
Let's see if we can do it first time through. Okay, ready?
Okay.
James, what an unpleasant surprise.
Oh no, I'm not going to be able to do it first time. Sorry. Unpleasant surprise. Oh man, you might stump me on this. Hang on a minute, James. Unpleasant surprise. Oh, this is tricky. Wait a minute. Come on, Chris.
I can give you a little hint to nudge you in the right direction.
Yeah. Go on, just in case.
If I was to do this quote in the actor's native accent, it will be James. What an unpleasant surprise. Now I'm going to give
Can you do that one more time?
It would be James. What an unpleasant surprise. Now I'm going to give it to you one more time as it's performed in the film, and see if you can bosh it out. It's a trailer moment, Chris. It's a trailer moment. I know you can do this if you can find it within yourself within the next 10 seconds. Come on, here we go. Right, here we go.
Right.
James. What an unpleasant surprise.
Oh, Tom, I can't. My mind's gone blank. I'm so sorry.
You are gonna kick yourself when you hear me do the answer.
Can you tell me the film? I mean, if you tell me the film, that's giving it away, isn't it? Pretty much.
Well, it is giving it away. But all right, did my natural accent not help you in any way?
Well, it just made me giggle, really. James, unpleasant.
If I told you it was somebody who dies in everything he's in.
Oh, of course. Oh my God. Right. Okay. So I know who it is. Oh, of course it is. Oh my God. Right, is it on the train or not?
Nope.
No. Where? Oh, is it when he first sees it? No. Oh, is it when in the statue with all the statues? No. Right, I'm buggered. Just lay it on me, man. I tell you what.
Flip it round with me then.
Go on.
You be Trevelyan and I'll be Bond.
All right. James, what an unpleasant surprise.
We aim to please.
Oh, you mother.
Yeah, I know. I knew you'd hate yourself for not getting that one. That's a trailer moment, isn't it? That one.
Oh man,
there
I don't deserve to live, do I really? That's it.
Yeah. I tell you what I do like about Goldeneye is when Trevelyan's accent slips a little bit. There's a couple of moments there where his true northernness comes out, and I love him for it. Yeah, it's good.
Oh man, he is good.
Cool,
Sean
good stuff.
Bean,
so that is obviously the scene where towards the very end of the film, in the sort of under the bowl base, Bond's laying his limpet mine. He gets captured and brought to Trevelyan, and he says, "James, what an unpleasant surprise." Bond's in his little sort of like green outfit, and
that's right. Yeah.
Away you go. Yeah,
man, nailed me on that one. Good one.
Absolutely. Righty ho then. So to finish up today's episode, Chris, we have Bond Girl Battle.
Oh, James.
Just keeping the British end up, sir.
Nice, very nice. Okay, so last time we had a bit of a tie. So just to bring people up to date, round 3, there were only 4 heats. In the first heat, Vesper Lind won. In the second heat, Tracy DiVincenzo won. So in the third heat, which was last time, we had a matchup between Triple X, Anya Amasova, and Xenia Zargievna on the top. Now, this was a tough one, wasn't it, Tom?
It was. We turned this one over to the people, didn't we, and got them to choose for us because we couldn't do it.
We did indeed. So before I tell you who won, I'm going to give you the percentages. And still, it's pretty close. So the percentages were 57%, obviously, to the winner, and 43% to the runner-up. So the Bond girl with 57% going through to the next round is the KGB's finest, Agent Triple X. There we go.
I tell you what, though, Xenia did pretty well there, didn't she? Bless her heart.
Mate, I tell you what, 43% of the votes is that is a damn good score. And obviously she's not. Obviously she's a femme, a villainess. She's not a main Bond girl as such, but I mean, really, really good to get as far as she can. But there we go. So Anya Amasova now joins Vesper Lind and Tracy DiVincenzo. And you know what, Tom? We've only got 2 cards, so I don't even have to do the hat sort of search this week. So I'm going to tell you straight away that in the final heat of round 3, we have Melina Havelock. There we go. Half
Very
Greek.
nice.
And we have Dr. Holly Goodhead. Come on, Mr. Bond. A 7-year-old can take 3 Gs.
Very nice.
So
now, I tell you what's going to happen here, dude. I feel like as we get into the final stages, I feel like it's going to have to be turned over to the people more or less every time, because there are some people I feel like we're just not going to be able to choose between at this high level.
Yeah, and you know what? I think it's probably going to be the case with these 2 as well, because I think they're very, very similar. Obviously, they're in back-to-back films in terms of Moonraker and Fiore's Only. Okay, so let's start with Moonraker. Let's start with Dr. Holly Goodhead. What do we like about Holly? Why is she a good character and everything like that?
As we said when we reviewed Moonraker, the good thing about Holly Goodhead is she is level pegging with Bond all the way, isn't she? The scene I always talk about is obviously when Bond finally beds her, and then he sneaks out in the morning, and the moment he closes the door, her eyes are open and she's up and she's ready, and she's matching him pace for pace at every step of the game. So she's great. Is Holly Goodhead? Obviously, she's working for. She's CIA, isn't she? Holly Goodhead, or is she somewhere else?
Yeah, she's
CIA,
definitely CIA. Yeah, that's it. She's obviously a NASA astronaut, trained astronaut.
There you go.
She's been to Vassar College, so she knows how to fight. She's learned how to sort of handle herself, so to speak.
Yeah.
Like you said, super intelligent, outwits Bond on several occasions. And it takes a long time for her to warm up to him, a really long time, which is nice. It's good when he's having a fling and has a quick, one night or whatever, and they sort of fall for him. That's fine. But it's also nice to see the Bond girls that, he has to put a little bit of work into him. He has to put that little bit of effort in. And with Holly Goodhead, that's definitely one character that he has to work on.
100%, man. I do like that. It's nice when he has to earn it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's good. They don't just fall over and allow him entry. It's he's got to have a couple of attempts first. Good stuff. So she's solid. Now let's talk about Melina. Now,
yes.
Melina, I feel like I'd be a little bit scared of Melina because she's got that look in her eye, hasn't she? That I feel like you don't mess with Melina.
Definitely not. Well, she's half Greek, Tom, and Greek women, like Electra, they always avenge their loved ones. So as we know, she's an absolute killer shot with the crossbow. Obviously really good with that. She's an expert scuba diver, I would say. Can also control a submarine, so she's at home underwater, without a doubt. She obviously can drive a Citroën de Chevaux back very well.
Backwards, forwards, and quickly.
Well, she says that, doesn't she? But I think Bond's driving it at that time. Bond's driving it at that time. And she can handle herself. When that the climactic scene when they go up to St. Cyril's, she's class in that because particularly she does several things. So when she's going up in the basket, that guy's trying to get in the door and he hears a basket, he goes around and she gets him with her crossbow. Yeah. Obviously, it's a lot quieter, it's a lot stealthier, it doesn't attract any of the other guards. And even better, when they go inside and Bond and Columbo and Columbo's men, they go into the place where the guards are sleeping and get them all up. But what they don't know is there's another guard hiding behind the curtain that has a gun and could easily stick them up, sort of thing. And she knows about this. She's behind him, gets a crossbow and obviously diffuses the situation. And that's clever. And obviously she is on it, man. She is on it. And those eyes, like you said, really, really good character as well.
It does make you wonder what makes somebody choose a crossbow as their weapon of choice.
Yeah.
Because, like you say, it is the ultimate stealth weapon, but it's quite unwieldy, isn't it? It's not like you could just stick it in your jacket and off you go. It's when you're carrying a crossbow, you are carrying a crossbow all day long.
No, that is true.
it's also very memorable and a very striking weapon as well. You remember the girl with the crossbow, don't you?
Definitely.
Do you know what I'm saying? It's like it's quite a striking thing to use.
And I love the fact that you can just rock up to a shop in Cortina and buy a crossbow. That's always been pretty good. I don't know if that shop's still there and if it still sells crossbows, but we'll have to check it out if we go. The other thing that I thought was quite well in regards to crossbows, I'll give you a little history lesson here, which you probably know about anyway. But back in the day, the English and the British basically used to have longbow. So they used to have bow and arrows, but like huge bows, and they were great for distance. You know, they were the best archers in the world at the time. They could, shoot from far away, and everything would be great. Yeah. Then the crossbow was introduced. Okay. Now the crossbow, it's less sort of distance in terms of, obviously it hadn't got the range of the longbow, but it was like so much more accurate. So I don't know if it was the French, it might have been the French, I can't remember, but I think it was the French. And when the crossbow was introduced, they started using the weapon in war. But it was so deadly and so accurate that the British believed it was unfair to use it. So they were like, well, no, we're not going to use a crossbow because that's cheating. We're going to stick with the longbows. We're going to stick with the bow and arrow. Yeah, exactly. The crossbow is ungentlemanly. That's just like, that's completely cheating. So they decided to stick with the bow and arrow, and perhaps eventually realised, well, hang on a minute, that this old crossbow is taking out quite a few of our fellas. So we're going to have to do something about it. But so there we go. I don't know if you knew that, but that's an interesting insight there.
That is the wonderful thing about JBR is that you tune in for a bit of Bond chit chat and you also get a history lesson as well thrown in for free. Go. Lovely.
Excellent
Good stuff.
So are we going to we're going to definitely put this out to the listener? I think either which way we're going to have to do it. But are you leaning anyway yourself?
I think so. Part of me thinks, okay, you look at Holly Goodhead; she's obviously going to have that high level training that Melina wouldn't have. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But there is something about that look in Melina's eye that it's like we often say, when you've got a proper psycho on your hands, there's like an extra level of strength involved because you just don't know what they're going to do. And I feel like if you piss off Melina Havelock, she will go to any lengths to get vengeance. And I feel like that thing of just when the camera zooms in on those icy blue eyes as she sort of stares into the camera at the end of that sequence, I feel like that could keep me up at night, that stare. And I feel like whatever Holly has in training, I feel like Melina could perhaps match in just pure ice cold rage. Do you know what I mean?
You know what? I think Melina and Red Grant would have made a good couple because they're both like absolutely bonkers mad and would terrorize like anyone that came close to them. I don't know. What do you think? Maybe.
Yeah. It would certainly be interesting for sure. Yeah. But I think I can't choose again.
No.
And I feel like it's got to go out to the people, man. I don't want to send it out to the people every time because it's a good chit chat. But at the same time, at this high level, I'm just not sure. So I feel like it might go out to the people every week. And I think this week is one of those.
Yeah, I totally agree. But before we do that, there is one question I have to ask you.
Go on in.
You're outside 2 rooms. Behind one door, Dr. Holly Goodhead is waiting for you. Behind the other door, Melina Havelock is there. One night, one door. Who do you choose?
Well,
tricky, isn't it? Tricky.
It is a tricky one. But I have to say, when you watch some of the behind-the-scenes footage from Moonraker, right?
Yeah.
Good old Lois has just, she looks amazing. And she's got that sort of husky voice thing going on as well that kind of does it for me. So I think I would be visiting Dr. Goodhead and see if she lives up to her name.
Well, there we go. That's obviously what you got to find out, isn't it? And I'm sure if you've got a whole night there, you definitely have time to find that out. Well, in that case,
what about you? Which door would you go in?
Well, you know what? I was not sure at all, but I tell you what, seeing as you're going to pop into Goodheads, I'll give Melina a little visit just to make sure she's not feeling left out, and then we can compare notes in the morning. How does that sound?
That sounds perfect. Again, very gentlemanly of you, Chris. That's
of
very
course.
Nice of you. Yeah, that's the
definitely.
long bow to my crossbow. Good work, man.
I'll take that. Right. Okay. So there we go. That about wraps up things for today. So did you enjoy the old stunt interviews earlier, Tom?
I did, man, and obviously, we're planning to do a lot more of those over the coming months and years. So, yeah, man, thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to delving into that deeply into the treasures of the stunt world of Bond as we move forward.
Excellent. Sounds good to me. So next podcast, you actually did a nice little hint in last time's podcast for what is now going to be next podcast. Do you remember what that hint was and whether you'd be able to do it for us again?
Yes. So obviously we weren't going to do a certain episode this time, but then obviously, interviews cropped up and we thought, you know what, let's do that. So my hint was if, for example, you needed to learn to do something that was dangerous, like pilot a plane or drive a car, right? Very dangerous things. Yeah. You need to know certain things in order to do that. And there are usually tests involved. So you take your driver's test, for example, you take your pilot's test. And then once you've done that and you've passed that test, you get a credential that they give to you to say, you are now allowed to do this. You can fly the plane, you can drive the car. Now, if you can think of some sort of qualification that Bond might have earned in his time, that is going to be the material we cover next time. Now, have you got any idea what that might be, Chris?
I think you haven't really given us enough on that, Tom. It's a bit cryptic, isn't it, really, that one?
It is a bit, yeah.
But I'm sure I'll
give you an extra bit of a clue.
Idea. Yes, go on then.
If you've passed your driver's test, what do you get? You get a license, don't you, Chris? You get a license to drive your car, right? Right, yeah. So is it license to drive? If you could, Bond does drive a car, so it might be that. We might be looking at some random 80s movies with child actors in.
Right, brilliant. Okay.
Or if you can think of anything involving a license that Bond might carry, there you go.
License to enter the bedroom?
There is that. I think that would be going back to the Roger period if that was the case.
That's true.
But yeah, we'll leave you in suspense for that. We'll leave the listeners in suspense, and they can find out next time, can't they?
They certainly can. Well, there we go. That's podcast 130 done and dusted.
In the bag.
Hope you guys have enjoyed it in the bag and enjoyed the interviews. Really enjoyed it ourselves. So there we are. James Bond Radio will return. I hope you've enjoyed it. My name is Chris Wright.
And I've been Tom Sears, and we'll see you next time.
I'll tell you what, let's do that again. That's wank. Every time I try and do it, it doesn't work. You can do it, Tom.
I'm leaving it in.
It's so much better. It's so much better. Right. I tell you what, I'm going to cut it in now. I've been Chris Wright.
And I've been Tom Sears. And James Bond Radio will return in 2 weeks.
We will indeed. See you then, everyone.
How have we still not mastered this after fucking 4 years?
I really don't know, man. We're going to have to sort this out.
See you later,
Bye,
everybody.
everyone. Ciao.
Bye.